on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
OK, at 7:32, tributes are flooding in for the Apollo 13 commander, Jim Lovell, who has died aged 97.
97, wow. He guided the failed space mission back to Earth after that attempt to land on the moon was aborted following an oxygen tank explosion.
Tom Hanks, the movie star who played him, honoured the legendary astronaut in an emotional tribute, calling him a true visionary. I think they really got to know each other well during the making of that movie. That's 30 years after he played Lovell in the 1995 film Apollo 13.
And the Apollo 13 movie was very accurate because Lovell was working on the Apollo 13 movie to ensure there was accuracy. There was a few bits of movie license to make it a little bit more dramatic here and there, but it was a very accurate depiction, and it showed Lovell in the wonderful light of who he was.
And they gave him a little cameo at the end, didn't they? He actually played a part. He played the commander of the ship, the naval ship,
that's right,
that picked up the astronauts.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people realise that. He was actually in the Apollo 13 movie. And Tom Hanks and Lovell spent a lot of time together so that Tom could act the role in as accurate a way as possible. He picked up a lot of his mannerisms to make sure it was accurate. But it must have been wonderful for Jim to actually be on the movie itself. We're just sort of scratching the surface of our spacefaring nature. We've been to the moon, although it's been a bit of a hiatus of going to the moon, but we've got the Artemis projects coming up in the next sort of 5-10 years, where we hope to get people back on the moon again. And, let's not forget, this is all relatively new technology.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 3 o'clock. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show with me, Alex Armstrong, on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and across the United Kingdom. Well, we start with an exclusive. New figures reveal sex crimes by foreign nationals have surged over 60% in the last 4 years, accounting for 1 in 7 sexual offence convictions last year alone. And a damning new poll finds 7 in 10 voters think Sir Keir Starmer is mishandling the asylum hotel crisis. Who would have thought it? With calls for tougher action, can the government turn it around? And dozens of potential soldiers have been barred from joining the army because of their bad teeth. Figures released by the Ministry of Defence show that in the last 4 years, candidates have been turned away because of gum disease and rotting teeth. Why are we being so selective on those who can join the army? And the case of Lucy Letby shocked the nation. A nurse convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 7 more. But could Lucy Letby be the victim of a huge miscarriage of justice? Were those post-it notes in the writings of a young woman in extreme psychological turmoil? And Met Police have...
Best man on the road! 1, 2, jump on!
Well, the Met Police make 140 arrests in the first day of Notting Hill Carnival for crimes including assaults on police officers and possession of offensive weapons. And David Mitchell says mansplaining is just men talking, or as he calls it, conversation. Is he right, or is he just mansplaining? That's all coming up in your next hour. Well, I hope I'm not mansplaining the stories to you all here today. I know you've got a very great audience joining me as usual because I'd love to hear your views. gbnews.com/yours. So I'll read some of those out throughout the show. But now it's time for your news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Alex, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 3:02. A helicopter has crashed in a field on the Isle of Wight, leaving one person airlifted to hospital. The aircraft came down near Shanklin Road just after 9:20 this morning, closing the route as fire, police and ambulance teams rushed in. Witnesses described it spiralling before impact, with 4 people reportedly on board. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch has now launched an inquiry into what happened. Elsewhere, the government is promising a fast-track asylum appeals system as the Prime Minister faces growing pressure over migrant hotels and record small boat crossings. A new poll released today shows 71% of voters think Sir Keir Starmer is failing to get a grip on the issue. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says delays of more than a year to hear appeals are completely unacceptable, with 51,000 cases now clogging the system. The fast-track plan would see appeals handled by panels of independent adjudicators instead of judges, aiming to speed up removals of people with no right to stay. Labour insists the reforms will be swift, fair and independent, but critics warn that nearly half of asylum appeals succeed. Protests at asylum hotels continued over the bank holiday weekend. That's as fresh footage of migrants on Gravelines Beach in northern France has been recorded earlier today. More than a half of all UK job losses since the last budget have come from the hospitality sector. That's nearly 90,000 roles gone in pubs, restaurants and hotels. UK Hospitality says higher taxes announced in the autumn budget have hit the industry hard, forcing businesses to cut staff, hours and even close sites, warning losses could top 100,000 by the next budget. The Treasury says it's helping with business rates relief, cheaper licensing and cuts to duty on pints. More than 80% of shoplifting offences in England and Wales go unpunished as recorded cases hit record highs. New figures show over half of shoplifting incidents were closed with no suspect identified last year, while fewer than 1 in 5 led to charges. In London, just 6% of cases resulted in someone being charged. Overall, more than 530,000 shoplifting offences were logged in 2024 to 2025, the highest since records began. The Liberal Democrats say the figures are an absolute scandal, urging more funding for frontline policing. The Conservatives want a zero-tolerance approach, accusing Labour of failing to get a grip on what they call the shoplifting epidemic. At least 20 people, including 5 journalists, have reportedly been killed in an Israeli strike on Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza. Officials say 2 separate strikes hit the site, the second as rescuers tried to reach the wounded. The Israeli military confirmed a strike in the area, saying it regrets any harm to individuals involved and does not target journalists. And Europe's biggest street party is in full swing as Notting Hill Carnival lights up West London. More than 1 million people are expected for today's iconic adults parade, the highlight of the 3-mile procession. But police say they're braced for trouble as 61 officers were assaulted at last year's event. 140 arrests were made on Sunday alone. This year, 7,000 officers are on duty with stop and search powers and live facial recognition cameras in use. Those are the latest GBNews headlines. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews financial report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3524 and €1.1544. The price of gold is £2,494.98 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,321 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews financial report.
Well, a new YouGov poll has found that 7 in 10 people believe Sir Keir Starmer is handling migration badly. The Prime Minister is under growing pressure from Labour grandees and senior ministers to adopt a more radical approach to the small boats crisis as public concern over the government's handling of these issues intensifies. This comes as a man who brought around 400 people to the UK illegally has defended putting women and children on dangerous dinghies crossing the Channel. The Home Office has requested the details of the smuggler but is being protected on condition of total anonymity. We can now speak with GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, thank you so much for joining me. This is quite a shocking story. Someone who's defending their position as a people smuggler, putting people's lives at risk, particularly that of young children and women. And he's basically claimed that he's doing the government a favour.
He has. It's a really, really interesting interview with The Express. This people smuggler is saying that actually the government could get rid of illegal immigrants if they wanted to, but he claims that they don't want to because these illegal immigrants are slipping into the black market and doing undesirable jobs, this is all a quote, that other people, that British people don't want to do. Now, I think we can take his words with a pretty large pinch of salt, given that he is an Albanian gang leader. But the very fact that he's, emboldened to speak out is pretty worrying. The situation is getting desperate for Keir Starmer. 7 in 10 people now think that the Prime Minister is doing a bad job on controlling migration, including 56% of people who voted Labour at the last election. Now, there are some things that the Prime Minister is talking about doing. Some of them might be really quite effective. Yvette Cooper is talking about speeding up the asylum claims process. At the moment, on average, it takes 372 days for an asylum claim to have their hearing heard and their decision to be either overturned or accepted. That's because there are multiple layers of judiciary. They can go to first-tier tribunal judges, get their case heard. If those tribunal judges pass it, it goes on to the High Court. Yvette Cooper is talking about getting rid of that first layer of the judiciary, replacing them with Home Office officials, professional adjudicators, she's calling them essentially, civil servants. That would speed up the process a little bit. But, of course, there are tens and tens of thousands of migrants already here in the UK, and we need to address the backlog really quickly. David Blunkett, you mentioned there, senior Labour grandees talking about what Keir Starmer needs to do. Really interesting interview with David Blunkett in The Times today. He says that this is a moment for Keir Starmer to seize the issue, and he says that Starmer's authority is beginning to slip away, and he suggests actually temporarily removing Britain from the European Court of Human Rights. It'll be fascinating to see how Keir Starmer responds to that.
Indeed, Olivia. And I think, not that I really want to praise this man's words in The Express, this anonymous interview in The Express, but he must have a point here, saying if the government wanted to stop this tomorrow, they could pull more levers. They could be... Well, I don't think this asylum backlog is much of a deterrent, because all it's doing is really rushing people through, and many of them will have right to remain. They're not saying they're actually going to get tougher on people who are coming here. So has he got at least a point to say, actually, the government could do more?
Well, I mean, I think perhaps he has a point, but sort of for all the wrong reasons. I don't think it is fair to say that the government is enjoying people coming to the country so that they can do cheap labour. I just don't think that's the case at all. Obviously, the government doesn't receive taxes from people working illegally in the black economy. But perhaps, there is some truth in the fact that there is obviously more that the government could be doing. If Britain left the European Court of Human Rights and changed the Human Rights Act as it stands, there are pros and cons of that approach. You'll hear people from all sides saying totally different things on how necessary the ECHR is these days. But if they did do that, that would speed up the returns process. If there was no incentive for people to come to the UK, then those flights would dry up pretty quickly. That is essentially what Nigel Farage is going to say tomorrow when he lays out reforms strategy for tackling illegal migration. But of course, that is very, very expensive too. And we're not quite sure yet how practical it is. Hopefully we will hear some more details from Nigel Farage tomorrow. At the moment, all we've heard is that he would give £2,500 to every single illegal migrant working in the UK to self-deport, which he says ultimately would be a lot cheaper than allowing these people to stay in the UK with the additional costs of housing for them, the hotels that we're hearing so much about, NHS facilities, etc., etc. So that's Nigel Farage's solution. Let's get some details on that tomorrow.
Yeah, and very briefly, Olivia, there was also rumours circulating that Keir Starmer might face a rebellion by his backbenchers on claims that he's going to have an upheaval of the asylum claims process. Are we expecting Labour MPs to reject or have a rematch of the benefits bill changes? Are we expecting another showdown?
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't be that surprised. It's a very bizarre situation that we're in at the moment because Keir Starmer won this enormous majority just over a year ago. One of the biggest majorities in UK political history, second only to Tony Blair in 1997. And yet his MPs don't feel any sort of loyalty to him. They don't feel as though it was Keir Starmer that won them the election. And so they feel totally happy about rebelling. And we saw them rebel in great numbers on that welfare bill, and Keir Starmer had to make a U-turn at the very last moment to avoid real parliamentary embarrassment. It wouldn't surprise me if some of those more left-wing Labour MPs, some of the MPs who perhaps were elected in the Jeremy Corbyn days, who signed up to the party when the party was more left-wing, it wouldn't surprise me if some of those MPs chose to rebel on an issue such as this, and that could leave Keir Starmer in a very tricky spot. It could be that Yvette Cooper's legislation is watered down before it gets through the Commons, and as we've just discussed, even if it remained in its current form, it seems like a bit of a chip of the old ice block.
Indeed, and Olivia, Keir Starmer has taken a hard line on some of his rebels before, including suspending some of them from the party. Do we expect him to do that now that we've got Jeremy Corbyn on his heels? He might push some of those people to Corbyn's new party when it's ready to go, perhaps.
I think that's a really good question. I feel like it's a bit of a lose-lose situation for the Prime Minister. He either lets these people rebel and loses authority in his own party, or he kicks them out of the party and they join Jeremy Corbyn and swell those ranks, neither of which is particularly good for the Prime Minister. It is very, very strange to be in this situation just over a year after the election. Right at the end of the Conservatives' 14 years in power, we saw that kind of coalition slipping apart as backbench MPs began to get frustrated with the Prime Minister, and they were prepared to be undisciplined. But you wouldn't expect to see that normally just, 14 months into this new government.
Especially with such a huge majority as well, Olivia. Well, thank you so much for joining GBNews political correspondent Olivia Utley. Thank you, Olivia. Well, carrying on the similar theme, shocking new figures reveal the number of sexual offence convictions by foreign nationals has increased to 62% in the last 4 years. Well, joining me now to discuss this is immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Ivan, thank you very much for joining. I'm sure we'll have a good hearty debate on this one. These are quite stark figures, and particularly when we look at the sex offence cases here. British people, 39.3%. Foreign nationals, almost double at 62.2%. People are going to be constantly worried, very, very worried, that actually with mass immigration still occurring in the country, that these sex crimes are going to continuously rise. What is the driving force behind this?
Well, I don't know what the driving force behind it. I haven't got a clue. But I think for those that are not British nationals, and even those that are British nationals but that can get other nationalities who wouldn't become stateless, the government has strong laws to deprive people of their citizenship. In fact, the UK deprives more citizens of their nationality than any other country in the world. And those that are not British national, those that have indefinite leave to remain or on some other form of leave in the country, as a worker perhaps, we've got strong laws to deport people who've been convicted of any offence which carries more than 12 months imprisonment. So the laws are strong. The government can remove people, even if those that have committed sentences of less than 12 months, the Secretary of State can always remove that person on conducive to public good grounds.
Yeah, but Ivan, we constantly see these court cases going through where the deportation is meant to happen, and even the Home Office challenge it, but activist judges often turn it around, don't they? They often let those people stay. There was just a case yesterday of a man who's committed so many crimes that the government actually said he's too dangerous to deport back to his home country. You have to stay here. It's this preposterous stuff. Surely something's got to give in the judicial system. If we can't deport dangerous foreign criminals, the British public will be wondering if we've completely lost control.
Well, you know what Germany's done. We know the elephant in the room for this country, for this government at the moment, is what it does about the European Convention.
Indeed.
And do we leave that convention and the impact that's going to have on the Good Friday Agreement, for example? And,
yes.
and also, we're the ones who drafted this convention. These are fundamental human rights. And for political convenience, would the government withdraw from that temporarily, as the Germans have done? And then even if we did withdraw from it, it doesn't solve the problem of removing those people which we have no returns policy agreements with. So it's all very well saying, well, let's come out the convention. But what do we do with people from Syria or people from other countries that we have no agreement to return their nationals to. And some countries won't even accept them. So even if, take, for example, a paedophile, some countries may refuse to accept that person. So what do we do with them?
Indeed. I mean, we've obviously seen Germany deporting some of their illegal migrants that have committed crimes. Many going back to Syria, some going back to Afghanistan. Even these are things that the government, people wish the government could do here. Why is it that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party seem so reluctant to take a hard line on this stuff?
I think that the problem is that we can't pick and choose the bits of conventions that we like and we don't like. They're fundamental human rights, these are. And if we are a law-abiding and compassionate country, then we've got to abide by the treaties that we sign up to. And we can't simply, just for political convenience, to pander to the public who are obviously upset about the asylum hotels. I don't think it's a good look. We'd be in the same room as Russia and Belarus, who are also not members of the convention.
Yeah, I totally take that point, but this is a crisis at this point, Ivan. This is a crisis, and the British public
It isn't. It really isn't.
Well, let me just give you some more figures. Let me give you some more figures. Of the nationalities that are crossing the Channel, there's 110% increase in sex crimes from them over the last year, over the last 4 years. That is substantial. We talk about weapons. They are up 9.4%, Brits down. Drug offences up 11.3%, Brits are down. Surely at this point we have to say there is a cultural indifference between those that come to the country, don't respect the rule of law here, don't have a cultural identity that matches and integrates with the British diaspora. We have got to take a harder line. This is a crisis. People are protesting up and down the country. It may not be on the size of the numbers, but the British public certainly feel this is a crisis enough to inspire people who've never protested before to go out and protest.
Well, numbers are important, and it's misleading what you're saying. Because let's just say
well, you're right. The numbers are important. What do you make of all those figures I just gave you?
Well, let me. Yeah, but it's the increase. You're going percentage increases, but it's the numbers that are important. And look, the people crossing the Channel account for 4% of total migration in this country. 96% are legal migration. So numbers are important. So you can put. It's easy to mislead with the numbers on percentage increases.
I'm talking about
how many people have committed these offences?
Well, Ivan, regardless, the fact is, and I'm not just talking about people who've come over here illegally on the boats. I'm talking about foreign nationals, people who've even come here legally. That is up 62%. And that is an incredibly high number. We're not talking about misleading. I'm not misleading the audience. The figures are there for everyone to see.
Yeah, its percentages is misleading. I beg to differ. You need to know what are the total numbers of Brits doing it and what are the total number of foreigners doing it. As a percentage, it might be an increase. That might well be the case. But you seem to, you seem to infer that the majority of people committed these offences are foreign nationals.
Ivan, just to be clear, I'm not inferring that. What I'm saying is British people committing these crimes are our problem, and I want us to crack down hard on those people too. They are our problem, but foreigners are not our problem. They should go back to their country if they commit a heinous crime in this country, particularly sexual offence, and they're not being sent back because we've got a very, very weak system, and even 7 in 10 Brits feel that Keir Starmer's lost control. We do. If we've got people staying in the country who we had I can't remember the exact man's case, where he was from, but he's a foreign national. He committed so many crimes that we couldn't deport him. That's a weak system, Ivan.
The system for deporting people isn't weak.
But I just gave an example there. Why was he not deported? Why was he not? He's too dangerous to go back to his own country.
In the mix, you have the European Convention on Human Rights, the right to physical and moral integrity, the right not to be sent back to a country where you may face persecution. You may not like that, okay? And that's a hard case. You may think, well, that's not right. Even if he's killed in his country, if he's committed this crime, send him back. I'm afraid that is not the compassionate country we are. You may like to do that. I certainly don't. My heart is not that cold.
OK, well, Ivan Sampson there, immigration lawyer, thank you for joining me. Frankly, no, I have to say I'm not compassionate to anyone who comes to this country who commits a crime. I would deport them immediately. My compassion's with the British people. But anyway, a government spokesperson has said this. Any foreign national who commits these kind of sexual offences in our country will face the full force of the law and be deported at the earliest opportunity. And thanks to the reforms in our border security bill, any asylum claim they make will also be denied. Well, there you go. A bit of a key change here. It's the final week you could see or live rent-free, mortgage-free with an additional $5,000 in your bank account. Here's all the details you need.
There's just 4 days left to see how you can win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. And if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, lucky you, we'll give you £15,000 tax-free cash instead. Hurry, lines close this Friday. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck, everybody. Well, more news. The Met Police make 140 arrests on the first day of Notting Hill Carnival for crimes including assaults on police officers and possession of offensive weapons. More on that. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Martin Daubney Show with me, Alex Armstrong. Well, 140 arrests were made yesterday on day one of the Notting Hill Carnival. Police say that 15 of the arrests were on suspicion of assaulting officers, including one who needed hospital treatment for injuries to their hand. 105 people were apprehended at the event itself, while 35 arrests were made nearby. With trouble flaring again, is Carnival really safe, or is it carnage? We can now speak to retired Scotland Yard Detective Inspector Hamish Brown. Hamish, thank you so much for joining me today on GB News. Every year we see these shocking statistics, these numbers coming out of Notting Hill Carnival. There's been calls where some people are calling for it to be shut down, some people are calling for it to be moved to Hyde Park. Is it really, now that it's so popular, millions of people are going, is it really sustainable that we can have this event every year?
Well, hello, Alex, and the word I certainly will not use is carnage. It's this massive event, and let's put a few things in context. The millions of people who thoroughly enjoyed themselves, and yesterday was Children's Day, and in many ways, people went away very happy, and it was a success. Of course, we've got that nasty thing to it. And it happens at football grounds, it happens all over the place. But this is absolutely massive, the attendance here. I'm sorry to hear about the police officers being assaulted, but when we look at the other arrests, I mean, it was offensive weapons where knives and firearms were taken off the street, as well as drugs. Now, this will be through intelligence-led stop and search, nothing else. It's not just picking on people. It's properly led, and it is there to disrupt. And that's what they've done, the police and the local council and other security people involved in this. So I think in many ways, it has been very successful, but on the another downside, if you like, is 7,000 police officers there, which means those 7,000 officers aren't patrolling your streets in the suburbs, and there's a dreadful lack of police anyway. And here they are, all packed into Notting Hill. Can that be right? And of course, there's a cost side as well. So I think the arrest should be put into some sort of context, particularly with the massive number of people attending, and you're showing some lovely pictures just now, and I'm pleased about that. So let's just hope the idiots who come along and commit crime, in my experience, it was often been when dusk settles in and robberies start, that sort of thing. But it's the police who are acting quickly. And the other thing to mention is the facial recognition. That's had comment recently, but quite a few people, I think it's 13, have been arrested through that. And that's a good idea, because victims to be supported would expect someone wanted for a serious crime, some harm, and that's what the law talks about, is being arrested. So many positives, but I think everything should be put in context.
Certainly. Well, let's compare it to a similar sized event, perhaps maybe less people actually, at Glastonbury Festival. We have far less cases of knife crime there, of potential even murder in some respects. Is it not now the reality that this festival is so popular with millions of people attending that we should just move it somewhere safer, because it's safer for the people going, it's better, probably better organised, better security, and surely that would take the strain off of our already stretched police force and ensure public safety?
Well, I think you've got to look at the music, the people attending. We look at Glastonbury and the fields there, basically. That's what it is. So it's easier to contain, and therefore not the side streets of Notting Hill. But that in turn, some will argue, and I'm trying to look at it both sides, will say, well, that brings a bit of spirit to the occasion. So yes, this is a West Indian celebration, if you like, which in many ways works well. But there are arguments, either ban it or move it, or others saying, let's just keep going. I think it's a difficult call. It is a tradition since the late 50s, I think, was the first one. And in many ways, I'd like to see it going, but I can see the contrary argument of the cost and indeed the crime. One would hope, and there's no guarantee, that knife crime would go away if it was just moved somewhere else.
OK, well, Hamish Brown, thank you so much for joining me. That's Hamish Brown, retired Scotland Yard detective, inspector, beg your pardon. Well, there's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. A psychologist reveals Lucy Letby's written notes could show signs linked to trauma. Emma Kenny, who wrote that article, is joining me next. But first, your latest news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Good afternoon. The headlines at 3:32 in a breaking update in the last few moments. The helicopter that crashed on the Isle of Wight this morning was being used for a flying lesson and had 4 people on board, including the pilot. The operator, Northumbria Helicopters, has said. One person has been airlifted to Southampton's major trauma centre after the crash near Shanklin Road this morning. Police have closed the road while air accident investigators are on the scene. The government is promising a fast-track asylum appeal system as 51,000 cases clog the system. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper calls delays completely unacceptable, while critics warn nearly half of appeals succeed, showing first decisions often fail. Hospitality has taken the biggest jobs hit since the last budget, with 90,000 roles lost in pubs, restaurants and hotels. The Treasury says it's supporting the sector with business rates relief and cuts to duty on pints. More than 80% of shoplifting offences in England and Wales go unpunished as cases hit record highs. The latest data shows over half are closed with no suspect identified, and in London just 6% lead to charges, a situation the Liberal Democrats call an absolute scandal. And Europe's biggest street party is taking over West London today. The Notting Hill Carnival is expected to draw 1 million people onto the streets. This year, 7,000 police officers will be on duty using stop and search powers and live facial recognition cameras. After 140 arrests were made yesterday, 61 officers were assaulted last year. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's sunny and very warm out there today before turning more unsettled with rain or heavy showers for the rest of the week. Now, having a look at the bigger picture, we've got high pressure across the UK today, but this cold front will bring outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland later. So through the rest of this evening, a fine end to Bank Holiday Monday across England and Wales, but a band of rain will give an unsettled picture across Northern Ireland and then later into Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest of England overnight, where the rain could turn quite heavy at times, but otherwise staying dry for the longest across the far southeast and temperatures holding up at around 16 or 17 overnight. So to start Tuesday morning then, this band of rain will affect much of eastern Scotland and still hold on to some low cloud across Shetland. But towards the west, that's where we see some brighter spells developing, but also some showers. So generally some sunny spells coming through across Northern Ireland to start Tuesday morning, likewise for parts of Wales and the southwest. But we hold on to this cloud across much of central England with some patchy rain here. And that band of cloud and rain will continue to slowly edge its way eastwards, generally fizzling out as it does so, just to bring a few spots across the southeast. But otherwise, behind that, it's a case of sunny spells and some showers, most frequent across Scotland and Northern Ireland, staying dry for the longest, most likely across the southeast, where temperatures still holding up at around 26 degrees, but fresher across the far west. Now, as we go through Tuesday evening, then we hold on to the showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some of these could be heavy, but largely dry across the southeast to start. But otherwise, it is still staying unsettled on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, with heavy spells of rain and showers and temperatures generally closer to average.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Congestion persists on the M4 eastbound between Llangefferlac and Llandasi, causing delays. In Leeds, significant delays are reported on the M1 northbound due to high traffic volumes. Staffordshire's M6 northbound has a broken down vehicle causing 30-minute delays. Cambridgeshire's A1 southbound is congested, resulting in 10-minute delays. In Leicestershire, a road traffic accident on the M1 southbound is causing lane closures. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast engineering works and cross-country industrial action may cause disruptions, particularly around London Euston. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your bank holiday at home. Let me read some of your comments out here. Chopper Carter says this, and he was referring to my previous guest there, Hamish Brown, who's a retired police detective inspector, and he says 140 arrests on a children's parade for firearms, drugs and assault on police officers. You know, this is the funny thing about it, isn't it? It's meant to be a family day yesterday. So today I suspect people would be bracing for the worst, because today is normally the day where the crimes do kick off. So let's see, we'll brace for more on that. Island of Strangers says this, why do human rights lawyers ignore the victims? Are they that damaged, and why do they always ignore the rights of British citizens? And that was the point I was making to you on the point that there's a surge in sex crimes from our nationals, is that there is always this sympathy for them, but never a sympathy for the victims here in the United Kingdom, it seems. So that's very telling to me. But what do you make of it? gbnews.com/YourSay. Get your thoughts in. Let's read on to the next story here. The case of Lucy Letby shocked the nation, of course. She's a nurse convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 7 more. Among the powerful pieces of evidence used against her was a single post-it note found in her home. On it, in block capitals, were the chilling words, "I am evil, I did this." To the prosecution and much of the public, it was nothing short of a confession. But could Lucy Letby be the victim of huge miscarriage of justice? Were these post-it notes the writings of a young woman in extreme psychological turmoil? Well, we can now speak with psychologist Emma Kenny. Emma, thank you so much for joining me. You've done this amazing piece today in the Mail. Would you just like to give us the summary of your thoughts on the matter?
Well, my thoughts on the matter are that as soon as I saw that particular set of notes that were brought in by the prosecution, and I completely understand why they were brought in, immediately I thought, this is therapeutic. So very often people in therapy will actually get you to do stream of consciousness notes, which just make you write down how you're feeling at that moment without too much thought, to give you an indication of where that person is. And if somebody's dealing with high-level trauma, or even just something as simple, imagine a teenage girl going through a really bad time and hating her body and writing things like, I am fat, I am stupid, and all the things that so many of us have said in our diaries. To me, when I saw it, I actually instantly put something out saying, this doesn't just seem like somebody who's writing notes. This has probably been suggested to her, or it's a therapeutic kind of catalyst for her to actually get something out regarding how she felt. And I think the problem is, when it's brought into court, you're dealing with a jury of really compassionate human beings who do not want to let somebody who's maybe killed babies walk free. And because of that, it's the leverage and power that's involved. And unless the defense does a very good job of putting out why this was done and why this was written and what this actually meant, and bringing in a counter regarding all the things of hope that she also wrote in her notes, I think it just is something that creates a real sway within the attitudes of the jurors. And indeed, I think it did.
I totally agree. I think there could be a miscarriage of justice. Of course, we'll have to see, because there's lots of people calling for some form of retrial. I know David Davis MP has been one of the biggest voices in politics on this, and he's written some very compelling pieces about why she might be innocent. Now, is it normal? I mean, I can't quite recall, so you might have to correct me here, but is it normal for people going through therapy to write these kinds of post-it notes? And I believe she may have actually been going through some form of therapy. Is that correct?
Well, I believe that she'd been advised to write down her feelings. So
That's
essentially,
right.
she'd been advised, maybe it was occupational health he'd suggested. And I would say personally, as a practitioner, no, I don't advise people to do it. Now, purely because I don't think that I want to reinforce negative thoughts about the self, right? So I happen to stay away from that. But I know lots of practitioners who would see it as a catharsis, and lots of people feel that they benefit from that catharsis. The big problem is that when you just select certain areas of those notes, of course it looks horrendously incriminating, and if you bring it in verbatim as this is a confession, this is an admission, then again it's incredibly compelling. And we have to remember, look, people might not like me saying this, but the judicial system is about winning. It's about being the defence or the prosecution and winning. That's your main priority. It's not necessarily about truth or lies, and who presents the best case tends to do very, very effectively. And my arbiter within this is not necessarily even to do with whether she's innocent or guilty. It's about reasonable doubt. Is there reasonable doubt? And unfortunately, I think that because the other side of this wasn't really effectively explored, i.e. this is a therapeutic paradigm, it's a way of people expressing their catharsis, it's a way of people dealing with very difficult feelings. It's why people write suicide notes and don't take their own lives. It's not because they didn't feel it in the moment. She may absolutely have felt responsible for the deaths. And I'm not saying that she was not, because that's not my job to do. I was not in court doing that. But what I can say is, I think there are some real concerns about the way that information was given to the jury as fact, which was not necessarily fact. And therefore, is it safe? And ultimately, I would say, no, it isn't safe. And when it's not a safe conviction, it needs to be looked at, because without that, we have a big problem with our justice system per se. And it's not as if these things have not happened before. There are many cases where some people have gone to prison.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it reminds me of the sort of times we all sort of blame ourselves for things that have happened that are out of our control almost. It's like a human reaction to say, this is my fault. And of course, she would have been there. She would have overseen the deaths of these children. Now, listen, it might very well be wrong, and she is guilty. But who else potentially here could be, at least allegedly, be liable for being re-evaluated? Because there's been fingers pointed at the doctors at the hospital, the management of the hospital. This could be a really big case if it's re-blown up again. If there's some kind of retrial.
Well, I think the idea of scapegoating is something that we've seen many times play into the judiciary system, the legal system. You know, when people have huge organisations who don't want to be considered culpable, and certainly it's not great for the NHS to be seen culpable, but we know that they're sued regularly because they do things wrong. So, of course, you have a whole system that's based against an individual. The system is something that's very well thought of in the UK, and therefore for the jury to imagine that doctors, for example, make horrendous mistakes and that children can die on their watch when they shouldn't, that's a horrible thing to imagine. As somebody myself who has lost somebody in such a way and has actually taken action against the NHS, these things do happen. It's very unpalatable, but it's reality. So I think that I understand the verdict, I really do, but I don't think that people have understood the intricacies and nuances of this case. It's very easy to say to yourself, look, she looks so sweet and so nice, which again is probably something that makes people feel like, oh, that's the perfect mask, you know, somebody who looks so sweet and so nice. And that can actually work against you as much as it can work for you in certain situations. But also, like I said, if your defence is not as powerful as your prosecution, you have a real problem. And right now there were experts, and this is another thing that juries have to deal with. As a jury member, you're a member of the public. You might have had no medical experience. And then all of a sudden you have these very confident, very superior individuals saying, this is exactly what happened. I am an expert. Now, we know that when it's come down to this case, new experts who are far more skilled in this area have come out and said that that's incorrect. We also know statisticians have come in and said, actually, the cluster effect does not mean that she is therefore guilty. But when you're in court listening to that, I guarantee for most of us, those experts feel compelling. We're brought with other authority figures of doctors, for example, and yet we all know, let's just think about COVID, that if you're on the side of what they want to be said, you're brilliant and an expert. If you're saying something contrary to that belief system, you are a crank and you're a grifter. That's the way it works when you're working against big systems.
Absolutely agree with you on that. Emma Kenny, thank you so much for joining me. Very compelling stuff there. Psychologist Emma Kenny. Definitely worth a read of her piece in the Mail there today if you get a chance. Well, moving on, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine? Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, there's plenty of sunshine across Europe and it's feeling hot too, but thunderstorms will be developing, especially midweek. So a bit breezy across parts of Madeira and the Canary Islands with showers here. Best of the sunshine really across much of Spain, but still showers will be bubbling up, especially across parts of Italy later and across Greece. But otherwise, temperatures still up at around 29 to 30 degrees. Now, showers will become more widespread into the week, but otherwise highs of 33.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
ChatGPT.
What's that?
If you don't know what it is, it's artificial intelligence and it helps you write things and research things, and you can even talk to them like they're your friend, can't you, Tom?
Shall we
you
do
know
some
about
of that
this,
now?
don't you?
I mean, we could talk to Chat now.
Go on, then. You love talking to Chat.
I was actually
Careful, though.
I was actually talking to Chat last night about Texas redistricting. It was very good fun. Wait, hang on, here we go.
Beats railway lines.
Hi, Chat. You're live on GB News. How are you feeling?
Oh, wow, live TV. That's exciting. I'm feeling great. Thanks for having me on. How's everything going on your end?
It's going great. We're just doing a segment about artificial intelligence. Do you have anything to say about that?
Absolutely. AI is such a fascinating topic, and it's amazing to see how it's evolving and becoming part of our everyday lives. There's so much potential for it to help us in all kinds of fields, including journalism.
ChatGPT, to which we were just talking, is undergoing a major change after concerns it was giving overly direct advice on sensitive personal matters, including whether users should break up with their partners. So you could write in there, oh, my partner never takes the rubbish out, he sometimes is a bit rude to me, blah, 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 and then they say, break up with him.
But here's the interesting thing. For people that have been taking relationship advice from this robot, well, OpenAI, the company behind it, says the chatbot will stop giving such clear-cut answers to questions about personal relationships. So that's a new change from OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT.
Yeah. I've just asked, does Emily Carver like Tom Harwood?
And
I've asked the chatbot
what does Chat say?
There's no evidence Emily Carver likes Tom Harwood.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, talking of bank holidays, Brits spend over 4 years of their lives nursing hangovers. New research has revealed with the average person feeling rough for 26 days of each year. I sympathise with you if you do. Sundays and bank holiday Mondays top the list as the worst for sore heads and regrets. So, are you nursing one today, or perhaps even tomorrow? Joining me now is landlord at the Dog at Wingham, Mark Bridgen. Mark, thank you so much for joining me. But let's talk about hangovers, shall we? Because it's bank holiday weekend, it's beautiful weather outside, and many people will be enjoying this, not only the sun, but their bit of time off, that they get a bit of relief from work. Of course, I'm here in the studio, as I've been here the last couple of days, so I haven't had time for a hangover. But is Sunday quite a big day for hangovers on the bank holiday weekends?
Yeah, we had I mean, it's a 3-day weekend, isn't it? We had plenty of people in the garden yesterday enjoying lunch and a few drinks. Yeah, we hosted a party on Saturday. So I think over this weekend, a few of our guests might have woken up a little bit slower on Sunday and Monday morning. Yeah, I think I probably did those 4 years in my 20s, so I'm not really not a role model of when it comes to hangovers. But yeah, look, you know, good weather, good beer, nice drinks. It's a pretty British way to pass time, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'd love nothing more to be joining some of my friends and family at the pub today. Is it a busy time for you this time of year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, summer always brings people out.
Mark, I am so sorry to interrupt you because we have to, unfortunately, please come back. We have to cross live now to the White House. The President is signing a number of executive orders.
2,500, we won 2,750, and they won 500. And that's, to me, the best of all. And we had tremendous in every way, the election. And it's hard to believe you can do that when you have a corrupt media. But many of you are corrupt, and it's nothing we can do about it. But we keep winning, and we're going to keep winning. And this whole story on crime is incredible that the Democrats wouldn't be with us. So the mayor of Chicago, I watched him this morning, he said, Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. He only apprehended 9 people. Well, number one, that's false. It's thousands. We'll get into that. But more importantly than anything, we took guns away. We have some of the worst career professionals out of the country already. They've been taken out of the country, and some are in solid confinement because these were killers. We arrested some very bad people. And in the last 11 days, again, I hate to say it because it sounds so ridiculous, but in the last 11 days, we've had no murders. And that's the first time that's taken place in years, actually years. We always have a murder a week. They call it a murder a week. You come here from Iowa, you come here from Indiana, you come here from Idaho, because you're so proud of your country, you love your country, and then you get murdered. Your son gets murdered, your daughter gets murdered, you get murdered. See the media, you get murdered. Many of you have been mugged in Washington, you just don't want to talk about it. And I know that every time I do this with you, you almost everything, but every time I do this with you, people are saying to yourselves, he's right, and then you write a negative story. But we are doing an incredible job. The people behind me are amazing. We're working very well with the Washington police, as you know. The D.C. National Guard is unbelievable. We're also getting tremendous help from Secret Service. And we are at a point where Washington is booming again. People are pouring in like we haven't seen for years. Nobody wanted to come here. They didn't want to come here and get murdered. I have a friend of mine who has a very successful son. And I said, where is your son going to be this weekend? He said, he's going to Washington with his friends. I said, really? Yeah, he's wanted to do it for 4 years, but he couldn't do it because it was so unsafe. And he's a tough dude. It's so unsafe. And he ended up staying 3 nights, going out to restaurants all 3 nights. He said it was so beautiful, so peaceful, because all the criminals are either arrested or they're hiding. And we're finding the ones that are hiding. So I want to thank Pam Bondi. I want to thank our vice president. I want to thank everybody standing behind me. Because they are really, Gaddy, you've been unbelievable, by the way. They have done an unbelievable job. They're working 24 hours a day. And Washington, D.C. is now in great shape. I'm going to be working with Clark Construction, which is by far your biggest construction company. And we're going to also beautify Washington. We're going to rip down the broken medians, fix them. We're going to put asphalt on the roads. We're not ripping them apart like these stupid people do. They rip a road. They rip a road down to the dirt, and then they spend 5 years in building the new one, and then it starts settling. You know, the whole thing is so crazy. And they'll spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a road. I'll spend about $2, and it'll look better. So we're going to be replacing medians. We're going to be replacing much of the asphalt in the road, which in the city, which is in bad shape. We have great stripers. We have great contractors. But we have to let them do the thing. The Congress has said that they'll give us whatever money is needed to fix up the Capitol. This is the Capitol. And we're not going to spend a lot. It's going to go fast. And it will be spotless. And we want it spotless for the World Cup and for the Olympics. You saw the World Cup was here the other day. And come to think of it, there's your trophy for the World Cup. In fact, it's solid gold. That's actually solid gold, so heavy that some of the people in this room wouldn't be able to lift it up. I think what I'm going to do is place it right above the angel, right over there. That's solid gold, too. We're going to put it right up there. Look at that. There's a solid gold trophy. They know how to get to me, you know. I like the angel better, to be honest with you. So we're going to sign, and then we'll take a few questions, and we'll tell you how good a job we're doing. We want to go from here to other places, but I was telling some of the people that in a certain way, you really want to be asked to go. You know, I hate to barge in on a city and then be treated horribly by corrupt politicians and bad politicians, like a guy like Pritzker. He ought to spend more time in the gym, actually. This guy is a disaster. Gavin Newsom's a disaster. When we went, we saved Los Angeles. You wouldn't have been able to have the Olympics in Los Angeles. You're barely able to have it now. They did lose 25,000 houses to a fire that should have never occurred because they didn't let the water come down from the Pacific Northwest, which you guys don't want to write about. I had to break into the water supply to let the water down. And even now, we want more. We can have much more. It's less than half of what should be coming in. I don't know, they have a political thing about it. It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen. But I don't like going to a town, a city, place, a state, and then be criticized by some corrupt or incompetent governor where crime is rampant. Like, take a look at D.C. Crime was rampant. It was at the all-time worst. It got really bad during the Biden 4 years. And then I have a mayor stand up and say how crime has reached a 30-year low. 30-year low. People are being killed left and right. And it's not a 30-year low. Think of it. So for 11 days, there's been no murders. The record goes back years where that's happened. They've seen that happen in years. And then people stand up, and instead of thanking us, which they should do, and she's not that bad. She's better than most. But, you know, you have people, I watched in Illinois, Chicago, Illinois is a disaster. I have property there. It's a disaster what's going on in Chicago. And you get Pritzker, he's violating our rights. I think this is another men and women's sports thing. I think this is one of those, you know, they call them 80-20 issues. I call them 97-3. I think the Democrats better get smart. And, you know, politically, I hope they don't. But actually, in terms of love for the country, I hope they do, because it would be good to work together. So I'm thinking about, you know, when I have some slob like Pritzker criticizing us before we even go there, I made the statement that next should be Chicago, because as you all know, Chicago's a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. And they say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense, and I'm a smart person. And when I see what's happening to our cities, and then you send in troops, instead of being praised, they're saying you're trying to take over the republic. These people are sick. But I'm really saying, and I say this to all of you, in a certain way, we should wait to be asked, because they have cities that are so under control, you know, out of control. So we go in and fix it. They take the full credit for it, and they go out and say, I heard it this morning. They're saying how well they've done over the last 10-day period, that they set record lows. They don't say that we're there with very tough people, by the way. They have to pass the toughness test. Otherwise, they're not working for us. So, and we're allowed to do that now, according to the United States Supreme Court decision. Now, they have to pass a toughness test. If they're not tough, we don't want them for this job. They might be great for other jobs, but not for this job, because they're respected. You saw the gang of kids. They were all huddled up, and a group of soldiers walked up. They never even got over. Those kids ran back to their homes or wherever the hell they came from. They were gone. This is one of the safest cities right now in the world, as crazy as that sounds. And it took 7 days. It took really 3 days, but we're now in our 11th day. So I want to thank you. So we had all of these things, 439 illegal alien criminals have been removed, and we have 6 known gang members, some of the worst leaders of gangs anywhere in the country, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. We have 2 missing children that have been recovered. They thought they were gone. We brought them back to the family. The family started crying. They couldn't believe that they saw their child again. 49 homeless encampments have been removed. Like we have the head of South Korea coming in a little while, the president, and he drives down the street. Already, his people have told me, he said, what happened? It's so clean. We always came here, it was filthy dirty with homeless and papers all over the road. That's the other thing. Those roads are swept immaculate, but they're going to be much better in a few months when we put a topping on them. They're going to look like they're brand new. We'll get rid of those rusty old medians that have been crashed into 1,000 times, and they don't fix them. They just let them, they lay them down on the road and they sit there for months. But we don't do that. We don't run things. We run things like we run this. We like clean, we like beautiful, and we like safe, and that's what we're getting. So I'll start signing the executive orders. To me, this is a very, very big deal. One of the executive orders has to do with cashless bail. That was when the big crime in this country started. And I can tell you who did it, when, but I don't want to do that because others followed pretty quickly. But that was when it happened. Somebody kills somebody, they go in, don't worry about it, no cash, come back in a couple of months, we'll give you a trial. You never see the person again. And I mean, they kill people and they get out. Cashless bail. They thought it was discriminatory to make people put up money because they just killed 3 people lying on a street. Any street all over the country, cashless bail. We're ending it, but we're starting by ending it in D.C., and that we have the right to do through federalization. Okay, let's go. Could I ask you to say exactly what this is?
Of course. So, as you've consistently identified, sir, cashless bail policies are a key driver of the disorder we see on city streets all over America. Catch and release system allows criminals to keep going back out onto the street and reoffending. What this executive order does, it charges your attorney general with identifying jurisdictions all over the country that have cashless bail policies, and then it withholds or revokes federal funds and grants that are flowing to those jurisdictions to ensure we're only supporting the people who have reasonable common sense policies around crime.
So what area does it cover?
Potentially anywhere that has a cashless bail policy. So some of the largest cities, some of the most left-wing states in America
Almost
have adopted.
all of them, right?
Illinois would be a great example of that, sir.
Oh, they have a great cashless bail. You don't even have to go to court sometimes. No, Illinois, I love that state. It's a great state, but it's run so badly by Pritzker. They threw him out of the family business and he becomes governor. Now he wants to run for president. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, we'll sign right here, right?
Sir.
So important. And this isn't Republican, Democrat. This is, and by the way, most Democrats agree with us. But this is just, we got to bring our country back. Okay? That's a big one.
Also on the issue of cashless bail, sir, this is a D.C.-specific executive order. In addition to the measures that we're taking that are quite similar to what we're doing around the country, in D.C. in particular, the objective is holding as many criminal defendants in federal custody and subjecting them to federal charges as possible. That means that they'll be held pre-trial in federal jail as opposed to just being cut back out on the streets due to a cashless bail policy.
Okay. And we have the room. And by the way, the prison they have in D.C. is horrible. It's horrible. People were subjected to live in that dog trap for so long, so unfairly. I have stories, you'll be hearing about them. That prison is horrible.
Okay, everybody, you can hear the words there of the United States President Donald Trump. He's going over, he's signing a litany of executive orders there. We don't know how many he's signing, actually, I'm not entirely sure. But of course, he started that with a bit of a ramble on his crackdown on crime in Washington, D.C. He says, we will fix Washington, and he's claimed there are 11 days with 0 murders. This is the first time in years that has happened. He's also called out the mayor of Washington, D.C. for saying that murders were coming down, but he said that this is just manipulative figures. So perhaps people in this country will have a look at what's going on there in America and wonder, wow, what if we had a mayor that would do that? What if we had a president or someone like a prime minister who would crack down on crime? Because I think many of you at home feel Britain's becoming lawless, and so this will resonate with so many of you. And looking at your comments, hear on your say. You're saying things like love. I mean, Nikki here says love Trump. He gets things done. He does seem to uphold his word on those things, doesn't he? Of course, we've also hearing him talk about his first two signing of executive orders there. The first one was this cashless bail policy, which I think is very American specific, but basically with charges the lawyers of criminals rather than the criminals themselves, which gets them straight into federal custody. So he's really having this big crackdown on crime. So we'll see more as that happens. We'll bring you some more as that evolves, if there's any more big stories coming out of Trump there. But in the meantime, let's head back over here, because shocking new figures have revealed the number of sexual offence convictions by foreign nationals has increased by a whopping 62% in the last 4 years. Well, joining me now is Conservative councillor for Buckinghamshire Council, Councillor David Moore. I beg your pardon, we're not going to be going to that story just yet. So we'll come back to that in just a second. We're going to be going back onto small boats, and James Gill is here to join us. So the small boats crisis, of course, has been a pretty big issue here. James Hill, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, the Prime Minister the other day has said he's going to have a crackdown on asylum appeals. He's going to try and force the hotel crisis to end quicker, James. But I think many people will be asking, well, actually, I don't want more of these migrants with the right to remain here in the UK. I actually want the asylum process to be frozen for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is all coming after a summer in which the number of small boats have reached record levels. We're on course for the highest figures since the small boats crisis begun. And I think you're right, that Alex, they talk about people's frustrations in all of this. So there's a new poll out today in the Times which shows that 56% of Labour voters thinks that Keir Starmer is not handling the asylum and hotels issue well at all. It's really noticeable that people like Lord Blunkett, the former Home Secretary, a Labour figure, coming out and urging Keir Starmer to suspend the ECHR and membership of the UN Refugee Convention. And so really, I think there's this danger that Labour falls into the trap of incremental measures, gradual measures, rather than the kind of radicalism which the public seems to be favouring, both in polling and also their electoral habits as well.
Yeah, let's come on to some of the party policies in this shortly. But, of course, the Daily Express are running this shocking story today of a man who's obviously anonymous, they've interviewed, and he's accused of bringing 400 people, including women and children, across to the United Kingdom on dinghies, which is exceptionally dangerous. But he's claiming he's providing a service to the government. What do you make of those claims?
Well, I think that, this is interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, as you say, there's this question about whether the government is trying sufficiently. Speaking to those senior within the government, they assure me they're doing their best. I mean, it certainly seems that given the amount of political capital they've invested in things like one in, one out, they certainly are trying. But clearly, there's a degree of cynicism among those actually facilitating this trade in people smugglers. And clearly, there is a sense that the government has not done enough to try and crash the GANs as they were going to say they were going to. The second point is, of course, the interesting thing about the Home Office's response. They're urging the Daily Express to hand over details of this individual involved. And of course, the Express is countering by saying that's going after the messenger rather than the message. And actually, they're not going to put their sources at risk. So I think it's going to be another story in which front page news. And once again, it's all playing into Nigel Farage's hands.
Yes, of course, Nigel Farage came up with that, his mass deportations plan, which I suspect we're going to hear more about tomorrow. So I wonder if he's got any surprises in there for us. I was speaking to a shadow minister the other day on GB News and was asking, are the Tories falling behind here? Now, of course, they have got a mass deportations plan. I was reminded of that quite clearly yesterday by the shadow minister for policing and crime. However, the public don't seem to be paying any attention to the Conservatives on this matter, do they? It seems to me that Nigel Farage has grasped this issue and is the only man trusted on it. Do you think that anything the Tories say on this matter is just going to be completely ignored, given their history on this crisis so far?
I think you've identified two really key points there, attention and credibility. The first point, this was an interesting line from the Green leadership contender, Zach Plansky, over the weekend in the Sunday Times. He said that there's an attention economy now. Everyone is battling for eyeballs. We're all living in a really sort of consumerist TikTok society where everyone needs to grab the attention. Frankly, the Tories have gone from being the most interesting party in British politics to the third most interesting. So it's therefore struggling to cut through. And the second point there, Alex, as you said, was actually the credibility question. Whatever you think of sort of Nigel Farage's plans versus the Conservatives' plans, Nigel Farage can always come back to the point that he hasn't been in government yet. He hasn't been given that fair crack of the whip. And so people might say, a bit worried about his figures, but in terms of sort of a proven failure versus a potential failure, people are more likely, given the current climate, to hold their noses and go for something they haven't bet on before.
Indeed, and of course, Keir Starmer with that big crackdown on the asylum cases there. Do you think, I mean, he's obviously not going to, he's indicated he's not going to leave the ECHR, but there may have to be reforms of the Human Rights Act in there. We heard potential, well, some stories, let's put it that way, some rumours circulating that backbench Labour MPs are unhappy about this change, potential change to the asylum system. Do we expect a rebellion? Another one, should I say?
Well, I mean, that really goes to the heart of the issue in terms of the Labour Party management, which is that there are some people in the cabinet, like Shabana Mahmood, who are saying they're going to investigate whether you can suspend different provisions of the ECHR, looking at that right to family life, which has proved so controversial in terms of deportation. But there are others in the party who say, look, we've got to stick with our human rights record. We are the party who was liberal on holding up our sort of rules-based system. And so I do think it's a key point of contention whereby certain MPs are urging for a harsher line, but I still think the mainstream of the party is not yet willing to do some of the most difficult things, such as ripping up those existing conventions, which, of course, were the bedrock of the last new Labour government. So Labour is in a really difficult position on this. And frankly, given, as you say, they're not going to leave the ECHR, and Lord Homer, the Attorney General, upheld his commitment to the ECHR in his first speech in Strasbourg, I don't see the kind of solutions which, say, Reform are advocating being adopted by this Labour government anytime soon.
Indeed, and of course we also saw that YouGov poll that put, I believe it was YouGov, put the Prime Minister in a bit of a difficult position with immigration as well. 7 in 10 people believe the Prime Minister is doing a bad job on immigration. Now, I will make the argument that actually this is what lost the Tories the last election. Do you think Sir Keir Starmer is going to have to take this radical approach like the bigwigs like David Blunkett are suggesting? He's got to go further in order to crack down on this? Or do you think there's going to be such resistance to it that unfortunately he won't be able to make the changes necessary to win an election?
I think that Keir Starmer is damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Either way, I would just make the point that in this polling, which shows that migration is now the biggest single issue for voters, the next two are the economy and the NHS. And of course, every time Labour, for instance, tries to talk about the NHS, what it's doing there, or how it's trying to turn around the economy, all roads at the moment, all public debates lead back to migration. And that is because the reform political economy model can say, look, well, the reason why we've got such problems in our NHS and housing, for instance, is because we've got a migration issue in different forms. And so currently the conversation is being steered back to those issues on which Labour's losing. So frankly, I think that Keir Starmer, every time we talk about migration, is unable to kind of get any sort of salience or sort of victory on this issue. As a result of that, I think that, it's only going to be something that knocks it off the agenda. And I can't really see anything like that happening anytime soon, Alex.
And very briefly, James, if you don't mind, why is it that Nigel Farage's party is just so good at breaking through on communication here? What is it that the Labour Party and the Conservatives have to do?
Right now, we are in a system whereby the anti-establishment is much more favoured than the establishment. And frankly, unless Keir Starmer articulates that voice of change, the anger and, frustrations that ordinary people feel like they're not going to be able to cut through. And that's why I think currently in a system where the establishment doesn't seem to be working in favour of the little guy, that's why anti-establishment forces like Nigel Farage are currently winning in the polls and are on course for Downing Street in a few years' time.
Well, brilliant stuff there. Deputy Political Editor at The Spectator, James Hill, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, I do think, many of you at home will be very upset constantly, and just like I am, when you see these shocking figures that are constantly coming out every day on immigration, the terrible case of this migrant here, this people smuggler who's really just sort of putting two fingers up to the country, putting two fingers up saying, I'm providing a service for the government. Many people will feel that's true, and it's a very difficult narrative for the Labour Party to get around. I mean, he's saying here, he's really going for it, an Albanian people smuggler, 400 people, including women and children. It's a very sick trade, isn't it, really? But of course, when we really dig into all of this is a failure of multiple governments, multiple party leaders. And when we really look at the issues facing the country, of course, we can't boil it all down to illegal migration. But when you see these, we're going to talk about this now, these shocking new figures that are revealing the number of sexual offence convictions by foreign nationals, which has increased to 62% in the last 4 years, well, you begin to wonder whether or not we have completely lost control, not only of law and order, but of the immigration system. But joining me now to discuss this, as I was talking earlier, Conservative Councillor for Buckinghamshire Council, Councillor David Moore. David, thank you for joining me. These are shocking numbers today. People up and down the country are constantly told this crisis isn't horrendous. I had an immigration lawyer, a human rights lawyer on earlier who said to me, this isn't a crisis, nothing to worry about here, these are small numbers. But surely, David, any number at all is too much for the British public in these days.
Oh, it's way too high. And as Disraeli once said, who was obviously an MP in Buckinghamshire, there are lies, damn lies, and there are statistics. And these damning statistics that are as a result of FOI offensives that have been made against this abysmal government have found that we've seen a huge increase in obviously foreign crime. Obviously, the change is sexual offences of British is 39.3%, foreign at 62.2%. After an FOI in the Ministry of Justice. Theft, British 55.8%, foreign 77.9%. Robbery, British 2.8% change, but foreign 18.9% change. So I'm no data expert, but clearly there's a trend that there is a correlation between mass migration and increased crime.
What is that trend, David? Is it the fact that we have a cultural clash between those that are coming here from abroad and what British values and law, common law is?
I completely agree. I think the social contract is breaking down. All around me, I feel society is breaking down. We're becoming not only an island of strangers, as our Supreme Leader once said, but if you look around, the litter is piling up. This was never a problem 60, 70 years ago. Not just litter, it's also shoplifting, police not solving crimes, too busy policing the internet. They're stretched for resources, and yet they choose to, there are issues with online issues. Obviously, we saw with the recent release of Lucy Letby, utterly shocking. Not Lucy Letby, sorry, Lucy Colony, where we had some shocking recent cases where people were locked up for tweeting. This is terrible. And meanwhile, foreign criminals can come here, commit crimes, then obviously invoke the ECHR and say, oh, well, I have a pet here, you can't deport me.
Indeed, indeed. And look, David, I'd be amiss. My audience will be very upset if I don't point out, of course, that many millions came here in the Conservative government's prior administration. Of course, we call it the Boris wave. I think it's been popularised as. But moving on from that, because I don't want to hold you accountable for it. You weren't the Secretary of State or Minister in charge. But your party leader now, Kemi Badenoch, doesn't seem to be breaking through with her message on this. She's, of course, come out the other day in a big letter to local councillors, perhaps such as yourself, saying we want to challenge the hotels in your areas. But does she acknowledge by shutting down the hotels we're only moving the problem to people's roads? Their neighbours will become these illegal migrants. Does she acknowledge that?
I thought Kemi took a really strong stance, and it was very welcome when she wrote to all the Conservative council leaders saying, look, you've got to make the most of these injunctions. And obviously we saw in Epping a really successful use of that. Councillor Whitbread is a real inspiration, actually, a Conservative councillor there who took the initiative on this. And I know many other Conservative councillors are doing the same. I wrote straight to my council leader, my Conservative council leader, saying, look, Kemi has said this, we should put all legal options on the table. So far, there are no migrant hotels in Buckinghamshire, but even if, just to be prepared as contingency, make sure we use these injunctions and every political and legal lever under the sun to make sure that none come here, or indeed there shouldn't be any in this country whatsoever. But that's down to our MPs, of course.
Yes, and of course, David, look, Kemi Badenoch has released this mass deportations plan, which many people will welcome. However, it doesn't really go to the point that I was trying to make, which is that you're moving the problem from hotels to people's streets. We saw some unrest in Northern Ireland about this earlier in the year. Does Kemi Badenoch understand by forcing the closure of these hotels that immediately these people are going to go next door to people up and down the country? Does she appreciate that that's where the issue is going to move to?
Well, I feel Kemi is actually taking a really strong stance and saying simply this: we shouldn't have migrant hotels, and nor should they be living close to anyone else. They should be deported fair and square, and we should use every aspect of the law. And obviously, looking at areas of the ECHR. In fact, many Conservatives are saying we should leave it, but not just the ECHR. It's more than just the ECHR here. You've got the Supreme Court. You've got all the Blairite instruments that are preventing us from deportation. So Kemi is clearly saying a strong message that the current legal instruments are not sufficient.
Indeed. And what do you think it's going to take? I mean, look, we're looking ahead next year now to the next local elections, and of course Reform are predicted at this point in time to do exceptionally well. Are you concerned that the Conservative Party is not getting itself into gear in order to win a local elections campaign? Because many places up and down the country, you look at places like Essex, it looks like it'd be a turquoise blue wave there. Do you think that you need to do more on this issue to really capture the interests of your local electorate?
Well, we really need to campaign on conviction and conservatism, and that's what the electorate wants. I got re-elected back in May. They said there would be a turquoise wave then, and yes, they did win some councils, but already their deputy leaders are standing down. There's chaos of what they're actually trying to do. In my county, I believe only 3 or 4 Reform councillors won in their local elections. I got re-elected on a strong mandate of Conservatism, and that's what people want. And people want a strong vehicle to get rid of Labour. That's the clear message here. And we need to band together on the centre-right and be very clear with conviction that this government is failing, and we need to rally behind a manifesto of mass deportations, securing our borders, and tackling this big bloated state that is costing everyone, all the taxpayers, all of their money, and being thrown in a black hole. We need to band together for that.
Here. Congratulations on your re-election, David. David Moore there, a Buckinghamshire councillor. Thank you very much for joining me. Well, a government spokesperson has said this: any foreign national who commits these kind of sexual offences in our country will face the full force of the law and be deported at the earliest opportunity. And thanks to the reforms in our border security bill, any asylum claims they make will also be denied. Well, moving on, it's the final week. You could see how you could live the next year mortgage or rent-free with an additional £5,000 in your bank account. Here's all the details.
There's just 4 days left to see how you can win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. And if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, lucky you, we'll give you £15,000 tax-free cash instead. Hurry, lines close this Friday. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck, everybody. Dawn's just corrected me saying it's not Badenoch, it's Badenoch. And I will do better, Dawn. I'll make sure I do my best there. Isabel says, no, Alex, illegals shouldn't be in hotels or HMOs. They should be in tents, securely in camps, not roaming around in our communities. I totally agree with you. Well, coming up, the growing use of weight loss jabs could be fueling a fat-phobic society. I'll be joined by health coach and obesity campaigner. That's next.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. Only on GB News.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you. For the Britain you love. For the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Martin Daubney Show. I'm Alex Armstrong, and this, of course, is GB News. Just a quick couple of your comments here. Freddie Brummy says Starmer could call a state of emergency and stop the boats tomorrow, but he doesn't want to. The Prime Minister is not doing his #1 job, which is to keep British citizens safe. And why has the King not stepped in and used the power he has to protect his people? Well, unfortunately, the monarch doesn't really have any power these days, and if they get involved in politics, people want to, have some sort of revolution and overthrow them. That's why they just don't get involved at all anymore. Colin says Kemi wants hotels closed, and yes, she, before reform, released a mass deportations plan, but her stance on crossing hotels is for migrants to be held in camps on military bases, specifically named unsuitable bases, unlike Nigel Farage. Well, there you have it. That could be a battleground for the two parties there coming up. Well, are we a fat-phobic society? The growing use of weight loss jabs could be fueling a fat-phobic society, and Oxford academic has warned. A professor says drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy risk shifting public attitudes, making it easier to assume there is no longer an excuse for being overweight. Now, a cure appears to exist, at least. So are we turning into a fat-phobic society? Well, we can speak to health coach and obesity campaigner Steve Bennett. Steve, thank you very much for joining me. Well,
it's great to be with you.
Good to be with you too, my friend. Are we turning into a fat-phobic society? Because I've always sort of believed the British public has always at least tried to be a healthy society. We are getting fatter, and we've got drugs now like, Ozempic that have hit the market and are transforming weight loss in the country. But are people phobic of fat people, do you think?
Well, if a phobia is sort of irrational fear, then I would say it's not a phobia. Because certainly the extra weight we carry around the sort of stomach, what we call visceral fat, is dangerous. And make no bones about it, it's one of the biggest markers of poor health. It's probably a bigger indicator than blood pressure, than blood glucose levels. So we should fear the fat around the waist. But what we need to do is help people battle that sort of visceral fat in other ways than just taking a simple jab.
Indeed, I read reports that that once people can sort of come off the jabs but put all the weight back on. So it doesn't seem like it's potentially for some people at least, a long-term solution. We also, Steve, get people who, in my opinion, at least there's allegations of certain celebrities who are using these jabs that actually shouldn't be using them whatsoever. So is there a sort of danger here that we become even too unhealthily skinny as a result of these sorts of jabs by misuse?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, let me say I'm not completely against these jabs. There are a few people under certain circumstances with the right help by doctors where it could be a life changer done properly. But we're seeing a scenario right now where it seems to be the solution for everything. And the problem we have, the evidence, the science shows that after 2 years, the body starts to become resistant to it, and you put the weight back on as it stops working. Plus, about 40% of the weight loss is muscle loss. So when you do come off it, your metabolism is now through the floor, and statistically, you should put weight on even faster afterwards. So while it might be the solution for some people, for most people, it is not a long-term answer. The answer is, how do you get the body itself to create more of what a GLP-1 is, which is by eating the right diet, by upping the fiber in your diet, by getting a good night's sleep. This is a replica, a synthetic version of a hormone that the body makes naturally. What we should be doing is coaching people to actually help their body make more of it.
Yeah, Steve, I know there's been lots of debate around these jabs over the last few months because, of course, people online are saying this is unhealthy for you. Actually, what you need to do is go out and exercise. But is it the case that we've become a bit of a lazy society? And I think this just extends to British people. I think this extends to people all over the world. It's human nature. We don't like to exercise. It's painful. It's stressful. It exerts the body. Is it a mind over matter sort of issue?
No, I don't think so. And I don't want to sort of shoot across your bow there, but...
Not at all. No, please. You're the expert.
Exercise is important, right? Exercise is important, no doubt, for longevity. But for weight loss, it is not about exercise. It is 100% about food choices that we make, or food choices that we think we're making, but because of the addictive ingredients that the big food companies are putting into their foods, we're getting more and more addicted to the wrong foods. So we've got to sort of take the blame off people that are overweight. It is not their fault. It can't be their fault when you've got, more than 50% of the population overweight. But we mustn't put the stress on exercise. We've got to put the stress on getting the right food, eating the right food, and educating people. What are the foods that make you put weight on? What are the foods that block you losing weight? And what are the foods that will actually help you lose weight?
Indeed. And do you think, I'm going to get accused of being very nanny state here, do you think we need to regulate the big supermarkets, the big food companies better in order to crack down on things like sugar in foods?
Yeah, I think it's hard to regulate the supermarkets. They'll only sell what the consumer wants to buy, that they're in that business. I think we do need a lot more regulation around the big food industries. We need more warnings on packaging. If you look at Latin America, if you look at countries like Chile, you go down the cereal aisle and there are warnings on their cereal boxes very similar to what we're now doing with cigarettes. So a lot around education, a lot around labeling, maybe taxes, maybe subsidizing the right type of farming, not the wrong type of food models, but more around the food industry, the manufacturers, not so much the retailers, because they will sell what the consumer demands.
Indeed, and just briefly on food delivery companies, because I've seen some worrying statistics that younger generations are becoming unhealthily obsessed and addicted to food just arriving at their door, which of course is usually quite saturated in fats and other addictive chemicals. Do we need to start looking at that as a cause, as a symptom of the problem in the United Kingdom? Because it is also accompanying those facts is a worrying rise in young people not being able to cook more than boiled eggs.
Yeah, absolutely. So that you could say the food deliveries are like the supermarket. If we wanted healthy food at 11 o'clock at night, they would probably deliver healthy food at 11 o'clock at night. But of course, that is not what is happening. And it does become so easy now to press a button on your laptop or pick up the phone and have the wrong foods delivered at the wrong time of day. So I think that the whole thing is around, once we can get to educate people how to lose weight. And it's all about hormones. It's not about calorie counting. We have hormones that lock us in what we call fat storage modes. We just put on more and more weight. And then we have other hormones that unlock body weight so we can lose the weight. It's educating the individuals about how to do that. It's not about exercise. It's not necessarily, in most cases, not about taking the drugs. It's about really learning about our food choices. And if I had to summarize it, really, I would say the number one rule is eat real food. Eat foods that your grandparents would recognize as food. Chicken that looks like chicken and not a square nugget. Fish that looks like fish and not an elongated fish finger. Let's get back to eating real food. Then we can lose the weight. And then when we lose the weight, we are starting to get rid of the visceral fat. And that is the dangerous fat that we're also concerned about.
Oh, Steve Bennett, health coach and obesity campaigner, thank you so much for joining me. Words of wisdom there. I'm going to do better myself, Steve. You've inspired me. Thank you, mate. Well, there's lots more to come between now and 5 o'clock. Dozens of potential soldiers have been barred from joining the army because of their bad teeth. But considering we're finding it hard to recruit, why are they being so selective? We'll find out very much more about that. First, it's your news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Good afternoon. The headlines at 4:34 and a breaking update in the last hour. The helicopter that crashed on the Isle of Wight this morning was being used for a flying lesson and had 4 people on board, including the pilot. The operator, Northumbria Helicopters, has said. One person has been airlifted to Southampton's major trauma centre after the crash near Shanklin Road this morning. Police have closed the road while air accident investigators are on the scene. The government is promising a fast-track asylum appeal system as 51,000 cases clog the system. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper calls delays completely unacceptable, while critics warn nearly half of appeals succeed, showing first decisions often fail. US President Donald Trump has said that Congress will provide whatever is necessary to clean up Washington, D.C. That's as he signed an executive order aimed at ending cashless bail for suspects arrested in the capital city. More than 80% of shoplifting offences in England and Wales go unpunished as cases hit record highs. The latest data shows over half are closed with no suspect identified, and in London just 6% lead to charges, a situation the Liberal Democrats call an absolute scandal. And Europe's biggest street party is taking over West London today. The Notting Hill Carnival is expected to draw 1 million people onto the streets. This year, 7,000 police officers will be on duty using stop and search powers and live facial recognition cameras after 140 arrests were made yesterday. 61 officers were assaulted last year. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's sunny and very warm out there today before turning more unsettled with rain or heavy showers for the rest of the week. Now, having a look at the bigger picture, we've got high pressure across the UK today, but this cold front will bring outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland later. So through the rest of this evening, a fine end to Bank Holiday Monday across England and Wales, but a band of rain will give an unsettled picture across Northern Ireland and then later into Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest of England overnight, where the rain could turn quite heavy at times, but otherwise staying dry for the longest across the far southeast, and temperatures holding up at around 16 or 17 overnight. So to start Tuesday morning then, this band of rain will affect much of eastern Scotland and still hold on to some low cloud across Shetland. But towards the west, that's where we see some brighter spells developing, but also some showers. So generally some sunny spells coming through across Northern Ireland to start Tuesday morning, likewise for parts of Wales and the southwest. But we hold on to this cloud across much of central England with some patchy rain here. And that band of cloud and rain will continue to slowly edge its way eastwards, generally fizzling out as it does so, just to bring a few spots across the southeast. But otherwise, behind that, it's a case of sunny spells and some showers, most frequent across Scotland and Northern Ireland, staying driest for the longest, most likely across the southeast, where temperatures still holding up at around 26 degrees, but fresher across the far west. Now, as we go through Tuesday evening, then we hold on to the showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some of these could be heavy, but largely dry across the southeast to start. But otherwise, it is still staying unsettled on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, with heavy spells of rain and showers and temperatures generally closer to average.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M4 eastbound between Junction 46 Langefellach and Junction 43 Landarcy is heavily congested. In Peterborough, a collision on the A47 eastbound between junctions with the A1260 and the A15, Peterborough West has closed all lanes. Travellers should plan alternative routes. Delays of about 10 minutes are expected on the A64 westbound between junctions with the A16 to Tadcaster West and A1 due to an earlier collision. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast is undergoing major engineering works, amending service to and from London Euston. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Alex Armstrong. This is GB News. Well, dozens of potential soldiers have been ejected from joining the army because they have bad teeth. Figures released by the Ministry of Defence show that in just the last 4 years, 173 would-be recruits were turned away because of gum disease and rotting teeth. But with a military recruitment crisis, should people really be turned away for having bad teeth? Well, we can now speak with former NATO commander, Rear Admiral Chris Parry. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. Now, maybe I should preface this by saying, you know, last year we heard from the Defence Secretary, John Healey, that they had to turn away, or they were losing 300 full-time recruits recruits a month at one point in time. So is it perhaps that the Army's being too selective, or is this actually an important part of the health of the individual recruit?
Well, it's not just the Army, of course, it's the Air Force and the Royal Navy as well. The fact of life is you can't deploy on operations if you've got bad teeth. I saw operations in Afghanistan where we had helicopter crews risking their lives to try and get people out of remote places because they had severe gum disease or sort of toothache or something like that. I mean, the fact of life is it's not just about your teeth. My wife, who knows about these things, says that it's also an accelerator for other diseases around your body as well, like heart disease and things like that. And the fact of life is that I'm afraid society is not very healthy at the moment. People don't pay attention to their dental and mental health. And because of that, you're seeing recruits that actually need an awful lot of treatment before they can be deployed.
Indeed, I think last year it was reported 27,000 troops were needing urgent dental treatment. Of course, does once one is in the military, they provide this sort of treatment for those who need it, I'm assuming. But are we getting to a point where we're looking at things? I actually had a friend who's in the military, and they said that they had their teeth done in Turkey. And this is also one of the things that might have stopped them. They actually got in, funnily enough. But there might be others who rejected on things like what we would now dub turkey teeth.
Well, absolutely. It's the same. If you have laser treatment on your eyes, then you can't be a pilot or aircrew. So there are lots of things that stop you going in. The basic problem is you're going to have downstream problems later on as you grow into your role. The fact of life is what we need to do is be more discriminating about health issues. After all, one of our most famous admirals had one arm and one eye, but that's because he was an admiral. He wouldn't have been much good at gun laying. So we've got to be very selective, I think, about the health conditions required for various jobs around the military. But at the end of the day, you've still got to survive on the battlefield or in a submarine or a ship. You can't enter with chronic gum disease or teeth. I think the Americans say you can't actually enter their armed forces or the National Guard if you've lost 8 teeth. That is an indicator for them. And I think the real issue is, not just the frontline issues, but also the cost. It's, as you said, a huge amount of dental treatment required for people in the service. And in this day and age, frankly, there's no excuse for not having good dental health. I've seen lots of children who've entered the armed forces in the past with chronically bad teeth. And that's the responsibility of society and parents to sort that out, to tell you the truth.
Well, I absolutely concur with you there. Perhaps just to widen this debate slightly, of course, just those numbers that we're losing 300 recruits a month. That was according to the figures last year by the Defence Secretary. What more can be done to get young people? Because, of course, the recruitment mostly comes from young people. What is it that's driving this lack of loss of recruits, but let's put it that way, but also the failure to recruit more? Because we're also talking about, this crisis in the military where we can't recruit new candidates, but we also are losing them at a rapid pace.
Well, I think people are joining for the wrong reasons. I'm afraid the armed forces are trying to incentivize people by saying, look, you can be who you like, you can do what you like. There's loads of adventurous training, there's loads of perks, there's loads of this and that. But actually, at the end of the day, the sort of people you need to join the armed forces are those who want to serve their country and those that want to make a difference. And that's what makes the armed forces special. It's not just like any other job. And the more you hear from politicians that the armed forces have to reflect society, you're going to get all sorts of people who aren't suitable for the military. You have to represent the best in society, and you represent them in the same way that England football players represent the rest of the country. You don't actually have to be reflective of every single minority or indeed interest group that exists in society. You just need people who, as I said, want to serve their country and make a difference. That should be the sole criteria for joining the armed forces, because it's tough. And people get into the armed forces and they realise that it's not just another job, it's a vocation. And that's what I joined for.
Indeed, and of course we've seen also a drive for more females, particularly in things like the Marines. Do you welcome that? Do you think that perhaps this? I know I would expect at least females, if I were a Marine, to have met the same standards as a man in order for there to feel like there's camaraderie there. But in order to actually boost recruits for regiments and places like the Marines, do we need to perhaps review our standards in the military? Because it seems to me less and less young people are taking up the call.
Well, I'll ask you, would you like to go into battle with substandard soldiers?
I certainly wouldn't, Chris.
Okay,
that's your answer.
That's the point. You know, I'm afraid the enemy sets the standards for you, and you've got to be at your very best when you are in combat or on operations. It's not a question of saying, look, these are the only people we've got. We're getting into a full Starfian world here, where you're taking anybody. You can't do that. You've got to go into combat with the best of your people. They've got to be equipped. They've got to be trained. And frankly, you know, if we can't recruit the people, we go with what we've got and we make them the very best they can be. I'd much rather have, you know, a small ships company than one I can't rely on.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. I completely concur with you there. Chris Parry, former NATO commander and Rear Admiral, thank you so much for joining me, as ever. Well, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here is the forecast for some of our top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, there's plenty of sunshine across Europe and it's feeling hot too, but thunderstorms will be developing, especially midweek. So a bit breezy across parts of Madeira and the Canary Islands with showers here. Best of the sunshine really across much of Spain, but still showers will be bubbling up, especially across parts of Italy later and across Greece. But otherwise, temperatures still up at around 29 to 30 degrees. Now, showers will become more widespread into the week, but otherwise highs of 33.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
To infinity and beyond. A Scottish space company, Skyrora, is celebrating a huge milestone after it was granted a launch operator licence for one of its rockets.
Well, the licence enables the company to launch from Saxavord, which is at a real place. It's the UK's licensed vertical launch port. It's in the northernmost point of the Shetlands.
But the search is still on for a launch pad to blast off from, with none available this year.
OK. Joining us is the head of government affairs at Skyrora, Alan Thompson. So, Alan, wait a minute now. So you've got a port, but you don't have a launch pad. Is that it?
Got a licence and there is a designated licensed spaceport, but yeah, there is no premises at this precise moment in time.
So how would you get that, mate?
We could, well, in theory, the launch vehicle that we're looking to launch, we have actually demonstrated it can be launched from a farmer's field. So we theoretically don't really need a launch pad. And for that reason, we are trying to see if there is an opportunity to negotiate with the people at Saxavord to allow us a corner of their farmer's field to allow us to undertake this launch.
Do you know, wait, I always see, Alan, programmes and read news reports about farmers having to utilise their land in other ways to make it pay.
This is the way forward.
This could be the thing.
Well, I believe the Shetland spaceport does actually have sheep within the perimeter fence. And yeah, it's something that we've come across a lot of engaging with nature.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Welcome back. I'm Alex Armstrong. This is the Martin Daubney Show. Well, let me just read out one of your comments here, because Humpty Tilsey says, well, I agree. We want the best in our military, not a quota that is a reflection of diversity percentages. Absolutely. It's just the best of the best. That's the way it's always been, hasn't it? Well, anyway, comedian David Mitchell has come out and defended men against accusations of mansplaining. He says men do it to each other and that it's just the way men communicate. The Peep Show star says that male friendships often revolve around what he calls a little mutual explain, politely lecturing each other rather than discussing personal feelings. Well, I can relate to that, but we can now speak with comedian Aidan McQueen. Thank you so much, Aidan. Well, maybe now that I think the discourse on mansplaining has moved on, because this was a topic we used to speak about quite a few years ago. I think quite a lot the word mansplaining was used. Do you agree with David Mitchell on his characterisation there?
Yeah, I 100% agree with him. Maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't. I was on the bandwagon of manspreading, mansplaining, you know, men are nitpicking faults in men. But now it is very true. Women feel that men should be psychic and also identical to them in the way they do everything. And they make no allowances for the fact that men have completely different brain. In general, I mean, there's exceptions, of course, and there's blurring of lines. But yeah, when a man is mansplaining to you, he's showing off, he's trying to be kind, he's doing his best, you know? And just suck it up, suck it up. You'll actually learn something if you manage to grind through the mansplaining. And sometimes you can get valuable lessons, you know? So my advice is smile, politely nod. He's not doing it on purpose. It's just the way their brains work. Our brains work in a totally different way. And men's emotional IQs are just lower in general. Probably an adult man at his highest functioning emotional IQ would be the equivalent of a 12-year-old girl. And
I can certainly relate.
Yeah, we make allowances for every other group. We know autistic, neurodivergent. We're constantly making allowances. We must understand. We must be allies. But nobody's being allies for the men, are they? Absolutely not. Men are expected to be perfect in society and live up to every single standard that women have for them. And it's not realistic. We have no forgiveness and no understanding. And the more you understand that men are different, the more you can relax around them rather than have these huge expectations. When I was younger, I expected men to be psychic, and they're not.
Indeed. I think many people will say, many women will say, well, actually, I'm smart enough to know what you mean without you having to go into detail about it. And they'll see that as some men, and I'm not saying I agree with this, by the way, I'm just giving you the counter-argument. They'll say that some men actually don't look down on women. They think women aren't as intelligent as men, and therefore they need to explain things to them. What do you make of that argument?
You see, the women, I work in a male-dominated industry, and I would have thought that before, but then I see men, how they interact with other men, and they act the exact same way to men. They'll overly explain things. Partly it's for their own brain to kind of process what they're doing, I think. So a lot of the things that we accuse men of doing that are sexist, men actually do to other men as well. So we just shouldn't take that personally. I think that idea that men think women are less intelligent comes from the 70s. I think men have been raised enough now in co-educational schools and by women to realise that that's not true. We have different forms of intelligence, sure, but I really don't feel the vast majority of men think that.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you, actually. I have been accused of mansplaining several times, actually, just doing this show. And I often say, Aideen, I was like, actually, my job here is to explain the story to you. And then people go, well, actually, no, I understand the story, but not everyone does. So doomed if we do, doomed if we don't, perhaps. But do you think this term, all this woke culture stuff is sort of heading to an end? Very briefly, if you don't mind, Aideen, very briefly.
There's a pushback against it, yeah, for sure. People are a bit sick of it. There was an overcorrection, probably. I mean, maybe men did need to get a little bit of be quiet. And now there's an overcorrection where now a straight white man, even being born a straight white man, is a hate crime these days. So you just have to watch everything you do, everything you say. And it's not fair. And we treat every other minority group or a little special group with kid gloves, is it? Yeah.
That's it, kiddie gloves.
Yeah.
Well,
no
Aideen, I have to leave it there. I'm sorry, I'm almost got seconds away, but thank you so much for joining me. Comedian A.D. McQueen there, thank you so much. Well, I'll be joined by a Reform Council next to go through those exclusive sex crime figures by foreign nationals. It's surged. Please stay with me. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's sunny and very warm out there today before turning more unsettled with rain or heavy showers for the rest of the week. Now, having a look at the bigger picture, we've got high pressure across the UK today, but this cold front will bring outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland later. So through the rest of this evening, a fine end to Bank Holiday Monday across England and Wales, but a band of rain will give an unsettled picture across Northern Ireland and then later into Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest of England overnight, where the rain could turn quite heavy at times, but otherwise staying dry for the longest across the far southeast and temperatures holding up at around 16 or 17 overnight. So to start Tuesday morning then, this band of rain will affect much of eastern Scotland and still hold on to some low cloud across Shetland. But towards the west, that's where we see some brighter spells developing, but also some showers. So generally some sunny spells coming through across Northern Ireland to start Tuesday morning, likewise for parts of Wales and the southwest. But we hold on to this cloud across much of central England with some patchy rain here. And that band of cloud and rain will continue to slowly edge its way eastwards, generally fizzling out as it does so, just to bring a few spots across the southeast. But otherwise, behind that, it's a case of sunny spells and some showers, most frequent across Scotland and Northern Ireland, staying driest for the longest, most likely across the southeast, where temperatures still holding up at around 26 degrees, but fresher across the far west. Now, as we go through Tuesday evening, then we hold on to the showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some of these could be heavy, but largely dry across the southeast to start. But otherwise, it is still staying unsettled on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, with heavy spells of rain and showers and temperatures generally closer to average.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Expect congestion on the M4 eastbound between junction 46 Llangefferlache and junction 43 Landarcy. In North Yorkshire, one lane is closed on the A64 westbound between junctions with the A162 at Tadcaster West and the A1 due to a collision. Normal conditions are expected between 5:15 and 5:30 this evening. In St Helens, a broken down vehicle on the M6 southbound between junction 23 and junction 22 has closed one lane. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast is running an amended service to and from London Euston due to major engineering works. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's the final week to see how you could win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Well, good afternoon and happy bank holiday. It's 5 o'clock and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show with me, Alex Armstrong, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and across the United Kingdom. We are going to cross live straight away to the White House, where President Trump is signing a number of executive orders.
And obviously he knew about it, but he blamed the young lady that worked for him and another person, and they got into a lot of trouble. She ultimately was, I don't know, exonerated, but she got out of it a little bit. But she went through hell. She was a young mother, nice person, I knew her a little bit. And another man went to jail, and Chris got off. And so when I listened to Chris speak his hate, I say, oh, what about the George Washington Bridge? You know, tell me about the George Washington Bridge. He blamed other people, but he knew all about it. So no, I don't know if they want to look at it. It's not for me. If they want to look at it, they can. You could ask Pam. I think we have other things to do, but I always thought he got away with murder.
Mr. President, do you plan to make an endorsement in the Texas Senate race between Ken Paxton and John Cornyn?
Well, I'll make up my mind. I like them both. The worst situation I have is when I have two people that I get along with well. I hate it. And they all want the endorsement. You know, I'm almost 100% of the people I endorse win. It's a great honor. And I got, as you know, I got the largest vote in the history of Texas by far. Nobody's ever gotten more votes in the last election. I think in all the elections, the 3 elections, but they like me in Texas. So people are waiting for me, but I'd rather not comment on it right now. I like both guys. They're both friends of mine, and they're both good and very different.
There's some talk among congressional Republicans about another reconciliation bill. Where do you fall on that, and what would you like to prioritize?
Well, I don't want to do cutting. I want to save all the different things. I'm going to cut things that are unnecessary, but the one thing I said, and I gave my word, we're not going to hurt anybody on Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security. And in fact, we're doing great on Social Security. We found 300,000 illegals on Social Security. We got them out. And, you know, things like that make Social Security very, very strong. So, no, I am very big into certain things, and one of those 3, you could say 3 of those things are Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We're going to protect it. And so we'll see how everything works out. If we're talking about rescissions on other things, I'm always open to cost cutting. If we can cost cut, I like it, but nothing's going to happen to medical. We have something coming up, favored nations, where I'm going to be reducing drug prices by 1,500% where a pill that sells in Germany for $10 costs $150 here because of the bad price. And I was all set to do it, and then we had the COVID come up, and I had to focus on that because we had the greatest economy in history my first term. I will tell you that we are going to be doing numbers on the cost of drugs in this country that I'm not talking about a 20% decrease, which would be great. I'm talking about 1,000% decrease. We're talking about where a product would sell for $80 in Germany and $1,300 here. We're not going to do that. We were subsidizing the entire world, and we're not doing it anymore. I informed the drug companies. I informed the world. And if the world wants to, if countries in the world don't want to go along, then I'm going to put tariffs on those countries, and we'll make more money. But they have to go along with it. So this is moving along rapidly. Dr. Oz is in charge, Bobby's group, and they're doing very well. And we're getting great cooperation from the drug, because the drug companies know it's unfair. You know, for years they'd say, well, we had to do research, and we had to do. I said, I don't care. You had to do research for these other countries also. They are ready to go, and I'm ready to go. And, you know, if I pull that off, there's no way a Republican we'll lose an election. There's no way. All right, one more question, Steve. Steve,
back to Ukraine.
Watch this guy. He's the nicest guy I know, and he asks the most vicious questions.
Why do you think President Putin is so reluctant to meet with President Zelensky?
Because he doesn't like him. He doesn't like him. You know, they don't like. I have people I don't like. I don't like to meet with them. Sometimes I do like to meet with people I don't like.
So how do you get them together?
They don't like each other, really. And if we had a real president instead of a guy that got in there with a fraudulent election, if we had a real president, that war would have never happened. Putin actually said, if Trump were president, it wouldn't have happened. Happened for a lot of reasons. Happened because of Afghanistan. When he saw how incompetent Milley was and all these guys were, I think he said, wow, this might be it. Because it was the apple of his eye. It would have never happened if I were president.
Mr. President, you have built a relationship with Russian leaders and also North Korean leaders. As they are getting closer, how would that affect your diplomatic approach?
Well, I have very good relationships with Kim Jong-un, North Korea. I mean, a lot of people would say, oh, that's terrible. No, it's good. In fact, someday I'll see him. I look forward to seeing him. He was very good with me. We had 2 meetings. We had 2 summits. We got along great. I know him better than you do. I know him better than anybody, almost, other than his sister. His sister knows him pretty well. Now, I know him well, and I got along with him. You know, I'm not supposed to say I really like him a lot, because if I do that, I get killed in the fake news media. But I got along with him very well, and we had no problem. If at the time Hillary Clinton won the election, you would have had a nuclear war. You would have had a nuclear war. We're not going to have a nuclear war. Once that happens, it's over. We're not going to have a nuclear war. No, but Kim Jong-un will meet at some point. I look forward to it, actually. But do you notice that since I came into office, you haven't had a problem with him? Hasn't been, you know, he tests lots of rockets. He does have great capability, I will say that. But I think a lot of good things are happening for our country, a lot of really good things. And the thing we're here today to talk about is crime, and specifically in D.C. I am so proud of what these people, every one of them, what they've done in D.C., because to literally stop crime on a button. I'd walk down that street right now. If I were, friends of mine are going out to dinner now. They haven't gone out to dinner in 4 years. They were afraid, they were petrified. Half the restaurants closed because nobody could go because they're afraid to go outside. Now those restaurants are open, and new restaurants are opening up. It's like a boom town. It's a great thing to see, and I'm very proud of the people behind me. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Okay, well, you can see that Trump has finished signing multiple executive orders there. And as we heard directly from him himself, you will get 1 year in prison. Well, those that desecrate the US flag will get 1 year in prison. Is that something we should consider doing here in the UK? Please write in your views to your say. I'd love to know what you think about that, particularly with things like Operation Raise the Colours at the moment. So, well, that'll be a very interesting discussion there. But we'll move on. We'll come back to that shortly, because a new YouGov poll has found that 7 in 10 people believe Sir Keir Starmer is handling migration badly. The Prime Minister is undergoing pressure from Labour grandees and senior ministers to adopt a more radical approach to the small boats crisis. That's as public concern over the government's handling intensifies. This comes as a man who brought around 400 people to the UK illegally has defended putting women and children on dangerous dinghies crossing the Channel. The Home Office has requested the details of the smuggler, but is being protected on condition of total anonymity. Well, we can now speak with UK border expert Henry Bolton. Henry, thank you so much for joining me today. This story in the Daily Express is a shocking one to me, Henry, because it's a man, of course, he's not willing to put his face out there. I can understand why. But really, he speaks possibly for many of these horrendous people smugglers who are illegally getting people into the country. I know he talks about women and children, but we know the vast majority of them are men. 9 out of 10 essentially are men. He's saying he's doing the government a favour. What do you make of those comments?
No, it's ridiculous. But something I would say, I spent some years leading the UK's efforts to disrupt transnational organised crime, particularly people smuggling to the United Kingdom through the Southern Balkans. And the reality is that, I mean, what this man has said, He's obviously only got a certain window on what's going on. He doesn't see he hasn't got the whole picture of the criminality, point one. Point two is that, his point, and this is the main thing, his point is that the British government could put an end to this if it really wanted to. Mm-hmm. And he is right with that. The British government, and 71% of the country feels it, and I can say it from a position of knowledge, direct experience, this government, and to be fair, the previous one, simply did not have the will, the moral courage, the political courage, if you like, and the knowledge as to how to stop this. If they had those things, then they would be able to stop this, but they simply haven't. And people talk about the will, and one of the problems actually is that there has been a lot of quite popular, attractive-sounding sort of ideas thrown out there. Put the Navy in the Channel. Yes, of course. If you order the Navy to, no matter what, no holds barred, stop those boats, the Navy will do it. Of course they will. However, the reality is slightly, the world we live in, including the UK, I mean, I'm not just looking at international law here, is that such a plan does not stand contact, sort of whether it's political, diplomatic, operational, legal contact with reality. There are ways to do this. It's just that the government doesn't have the knowledge as to how to do it, and it doesn't have the will, moreover, to do it. That's the problem. So 71% of the population are absolutely right to say that they're dissatisfied with what's going on.
Indeed, Henry, and of course we've now seen the three sort of at least contenders of the major political parties, Labour, Reform and the Tories, release some think along these lines. Labour seems to be much more reluctant to talk about mass deportations as such. The Tories, of course, have published a mass deportations plan, but it doesn't quite acknowledge them leaving the ECHR yet. Nigel Farage is going to be doing more on this tomorrow, but they are stating they'll leave the ECHR. They will do mass deportations of illegal migrants. But let's get back to the government for a second before I hear your critique of those. The government's Asylum claims that they want to speed up and overhaul the system. What do you think that's going to do? Do you think that's going to have any impact whatsoever on this crisis?
It can do from a public relations point of view, because then they will be able to say, look, the waiting lists and and the lag in terms of processing these claims is reducing. Well, that's a good headline for them to get. But the reality is that unless they put in the correct resources, correctly trained, then all it is going to be is a process. You can accelerate a process, but whether that process is effective or not depends on what you're trying to achieve. And if you are a politician trying to achieve a good headline, it's very easy to do. If you're a politician, on the other hand, or a prime minister or a home secretary trying to achieve security of the United Kingdom and the British people, that's a far more difficult thing to achieve, and you can't do it overnight unless you put in all those resources. And I see absolutely nothing from the government that's going to have any impact on that. So I think this is window dressing. I think if the British government wanted to do this, then they could, as I said before.
Indeed.
It's not happening. And it's the same with the accommodation, by the way. I mean, there is no strategic plan here. There's no strategic plan. There's no long-term solution. And as long as people come across the channel in the numbers that they are, we're going to have a problem with accommodating them. It's simple as that.
Well, there we have it. Henry Bolton, UK border expert. Well said, Henry. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to move on quickly to some breaking news. Unfortunately, 3 people are confirmed dead following the helicopter that crashed on the Isle of Wight this morning as being used for a flying lesson. So just repeat that news for you there. Unfortunately, 3 people are now confirmed dead following the helicopter that crashed on the Isle of Wight this morning that was being used for a flying lesson. We'll have more reaction on that very shortly. OK, well, let's move on. Shocking new figures today reveal the number of sexual offence convictions by foreign nationals has increased by 62% in the last 4 years. Quite shocking statistics there. We keep seeing these very regularly. But joining me now to talk about this, Reform UK Councillor for the Westminster City is Layla Cunningham. Layla, thank you so much for joining me, especially on such a lovely bank holiday. I appreciate you coming in. Many people are going to be very concerned when they see these numbers today. This is quite shocking, and we see these sorts of figures now sort of paraded quite regularly by the British media. Places like London have experienced high volumes of immigration over the years. And we're talking about the Boris wave of 1 million people coming into the country. And, of course, it's not just concentrated here in London, but it's, of course, across the country. How concerned do you think people should be about the rise in these numbers?
I think they should be very concerned. 110% rise in sex offenders from the top channel crossing countries is very concerning, especially when you view it with the fact that they're still putting these men in hotels near schools, right? If you're a known sex offender in this country, you don't house that sex offender in a hotel opposite a school, but we're doing that to foreign nationals with a complete disregard to the safety of those communities. And I think people should be very concerned. And when people say, you know, they're heartless or they have no compassion, people aren't angry because they're heartless. They're angry because the government has put them in danger and still won't do anything about it or even admit it.
Of course, we'll talk about Labour's, of course, got a new policy. We're just discussing that there briefly with Henry before asylum seekers in the United Kingdom or illegal migrants, whatever you want to call them. He wants to fast-track them. He wants to end the hotel crisis. And we've seen the Tory party leader, Kemi Badenoch, I get hold off for that, it's Badenoch. Apologies for anyone offended by that. Kemi Badenoch coming out and saying she's trying to push her local authorities to tackle and get the hotels closed. Reform is doing something similar. However, you're just moving the problem to HMOs at this point in time because the government doesn't seem like it's willing to commit to putting them onto bases or mass deportations. Is there a concern that if we close these hotels too quickly, these sorts of crimes we're seeing, which I'm not attributing to all illegal migrants, but it is a stark rise there, are you concerned that you might be pushing them to the next door neighbours of people living down there at each other's roads?
Alex, there has been a major failure of safeguarding all around. There's been no planning for this. This isn't something new. We should have had bases, detention centres. Europe, like France, like Italy, built already, and they should be housed and deported straight away. No one's denying that we have our own sex offenders, right? We do. But the main difference is the foreign sex offenders don't have to be here. The government's letting them in and making us pay for it.
Indeed.
And no, I don't think they should be moved to HMOs. I think they need to be deported. But, of course, the government hasn't planned for it, just like the Tories didn't plan for it. I don't know, Kemi Badenoch, has she now decided to leave the ECHR?
No, not yet. Apparently not yet. I was quizzing a Shadow Justice Minister on this just the other day, and unfortunately not yet.
Right.
Perhaps some turmoil in the party, perhaps some disagreements amongst some of the top brass, but they are planning to release something on this in the near future. They said they're doing this consultation. You have committed to leaving the ECHR. You are committed to deportations. Nigel Farage is going to do more on this tomorrow, but we know preliminarily that he's going to say that they're going to offer illegal migrants money to leave. Now, many people will look at that and go, actually, I don't want to offer them anything. I just want them rounded up and deported from the country. Why would you not go for the more tough approach, which is getting the police out, find these people and deport them without paying them a penny?
So I think I haven't seen the plan. You'll have to wait for it tomorrow, and Nigel will outline the answer to that exact question. But it's the political will to deport them. It is madness why it's only come down to reform to recognise this. I don't understand what previous governments or this government's doing.
Indeed. I feel very similarly to you, Leila. Well, let's just change topic here, if you don't mind, because Donald Trump has just been on air for the last hour or so. We've cut to him a few times, but he has signed an executive order now that if anyone desecrates the United States flag in America, they will face up to a year in jail. Well, of course, we're in the midst of this Operation Raise the Colours across the country, which many people are heralding as a great sign of British patriotism, English patriotism, Welsh patriotism. Would you have a similar policy, perhaps, a reform?
I'd have to think about that, Alex. I do understand where he's coming from. We have lost a sense of national pride. It's upsetting when I hear that some councils are banning the flag. How dare they? How can you be ashamed of our flag? Number one, it's absolutely beautiful. And number two, it's a representation of our country and everything that is great for our country. And frankly, those councils that don't want them up shouldn't be running our councils because they're not patriotic. Yeah,
we've seen many commentators online saying actually this is a campaign of aggression by some. Some people saying actually no, this is not an act of patriotism. I am not saying that, just to be clear to the audience who's listening. I'm just saying some people are saying this. What do you make of those sorts of comments? Do you believe that this is an act of aggression by what people are dubbing the so-called far right, the elusive far right?
I think what is an act of aggression, right, is how the British people have been ignored, how their interests and their safeguarding has been ignored. You can't... Let's make it clear. This government and the previous government have housed unvetted men in the middle of communities near schools and villages. And there have been allegations of sexual assault. And every sexual assault that occurs as a result of that is directly attributed to government's decisions or policies. And I think raising the flags is telling the government, we matter. We matter more than the foreign criminals, and it's time that you protected us and not them.
Indeed. Layla, just briefly, because there was I can't recall exactly, but there was a Reform councillor, perhaps someone quite senior in a local area, who was condemning some of the flag raising and was saying, actually, this is an act of vandalism, we do not support it. So there seems to perhaps be some sort of disconnect there. What do you think? Should Reform have some sort of policy line on this, or at least clear communication that we either support the flag raising or we don't?
I don't know about that councillor. And I don't know if it was an act of vandalism. That's a council decision. I'm just talking about the symbolism, why people are doing it. I'm not sure about the council regulation on putting a flag up. I'm talking about why people are doing it. People are so frustrated, and they've protested. They've done everything, and no one's listening to them. So they're like, what should we do now? Yeah. We'll just put up the flag. Remember, we're British, we're here. And you know what really upsets people is that the same people that promised them safety and made them vote for them are doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, indeed.
And actually, I think the government should stand up and go, you know what, we have to do something. We have to protect our people, but they're not.
Well, Layla Cunningham there, thank you so much for joining me, Reform UK Councillor for Westminster City. More to come, I'm sure, on this flag stuff. We're going to have lots of debates about this, whether we should. And I want to know, do you think we should have a flag desecration law here? Do you think people should spend time in prison for desecrating the flag? Let me know, gbnews.com/your say. Well, the government spokesperson has said this: any foreign national who commits these kinds of sexual offences in our country will face the full force of the law and be deported at the earliest opportunity. And thanks to the reforms in our border security bill, any asylum claims they make will also be denied. Well, in a change of tune, here's the final week you could see how you could live the next year, mortgage or rent free, with an additional $5,000 in your bank. Here's all the details you're going to need.
There's just 4 days left to see how you can win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. And if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, lucky you, we'll give you £15,000 tax-free cash instead. Hurry, lines close this Friday. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 922. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
All right, good luck, everybody. Well, we've got more to come. After, I'm going to be reading out your comments on whether you believe we should have a flag desecration law like the United States. So I will see you very shortly after the break.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Alex Armstrong on the Martin Daubney Show today. Just a reminder on the breaking news in the last few moments. 3 people are confirmed dead following the helicopter that crashed on the Isle of Wight this morning that was being used for a flying lesson. That's very sad news there. 3 people have unfortunately died following that helicopter crash on the Isle of Wight this morning that was being used for a flying lesson. We will bring you more reaction later on that. But let's move on to Carnival. But actually, before we do that, let me just read some of your comments, because you have messaged me about this flag desecration executive order that the president has signed. What have we said here? Let's have a quick look. David Fraser says, we should definitely pass a law so anyone vandalising our flag should go to prison for 2 years, not 1 year. He's doubling down on that. I fought for this country, and I think it's disgusting how some people treat our flag and our country. Well, there you have it. Alan says, imagine Keir Starmer jailing people for desecrating the British flag. I think it would be very unusual, wouldn't it? John says, Tories had 14 years, Alex, and Labour started opening the floodgates. People will not take it anymore. Seems to be the feeling, doesn't it? But anyway, let's get on to Carnival now, because 140 arrests were made on day 1 of Notting Hill Carnival yesterday. Police say that 15 of the arrests were on suspicion of assaulting officers, including 1 who needed hospital treatment for injuries to their hand. 105 people were apprehended at the event itself, while 35 arrests were made nearby. With trouble flaring again, is Carnival really safe? Well, we can now speak with anti-knife campaigner Matt Ajayi. Matt, thank you so much for joining me. It seems every year that these horrific instances happen of knife crime at Carnival. Many people, commentators online, calling for Carnival to be closed. Some saying actually it should be moved to a safer location like Hyde Park. What's your take on the situation?
Thank you for having me. Well, as we saw, yesterday was the Kids' Day and it was 140 arrests, which is absolutely unacceptable. And this comes after 100 people arrested the day before Carnival. So what law enforcement are anticipating is that there's going to be violence and aggression there. There should never, ever be a point where they're gearing up to arrest people before the event actually happens. You know, I thought that's very unacceptable. And yesterday just confirmed that 140 arrests yesterday, and that's 40 arrests more than the previous year, last year, which is unacceptable. And it shows that crime is definitely going up in Carnival. And this is something that Sadiq Khan needs to get a grip on, because I believe right now he's absolutely behind, not only with Carnival, but with crime in London in general. You know, no one can walk around safe. You know, he just doesn't.
You know, last year there were 8 stabbings, I think, confirmed, 2 life-threatening injuries as a result of those. Why is there, I mean, Matt, you're obviously an anti-knife campaigner. Why is it that we see instances of knife crime go up, particularly at Notting Hill Carnival? We obviously have other big venues like Glastonbury that host hundreds of thousands of people. We don't see such violence. Is it because Carnival itself is in such a difficult location where the police can't effectively check people coming in? Or is it because there is an issue where there's gang members coming from nearby towns and infiltrating the Carnival?
It's lack of accountability. It's the people that are coming into Carnival. You know, if you've got a lot of gang members that are coming in, you know, they look at Carnival as, you know, that's the battlefield where they're going to just iron things out. And that should never, ever be the case. You know, I feel like they should, you know, if they're good, they should just stay at home because they're spoiling it for the rest of the people. But ultimately, it's self-accountability. If the Black community don't have self-accountability to hold the people in a Black community accountable for what they're doing, then unfortunately this is just going to carry on going, and we have no one else to blame but ourselves if this carries on.
Yeah,
so
and
we have to take.
Indeed, and there's been a year-on-year increase in knife crime, particularly here in London. Of course, I'm in London. I'm born and bred London. You know, it's for me a national shame for us as the capital city that we see this constant rise in knife crime. It rose by 9% last year, up until March 2025. So it was 16,000 plus offences. Why is it we're seeing such an increase in knife crime in London?
Honestly speaking, I feel like, of course, Sadiq Khan is to blame. Like, he's definitely to blame because he's not being proactive whatsoever in relation to tackling knife crime. And a lot of these guys know that not much will be done, really. They know that there's no deterrent put in place for them not to reoffend again. You know, so the deterrent needs to come, and there needs to be urgency because this is an urgent, you know, matter that needs to be dealt with. If not, then the statistics are just going to carry on growing year by year up until a point where it becomes unbearable. It's already unbearable currently, but if it just carries on going in this direction, then, you know, we're looking at a complete lawless London whereby it's going to just get worse times 10.
Matt, would you advocate for moving Carnival to somewhere like Hyde Park?
Yeah, I was listening to discussions on this, taking it to Hyde Park. You know, so far the crime because I've seen some videos in Hyde Park where people are just going at it as well. So I don't think the location is going to make any difference. It's the people coming to Carnival. There needs to be, you know, we just can't have this kind of savage behavior in Carnival, because even if it goes to Hyde Park, that will still be the battleground for a lot of members that will be attending. So, you know, it's kind of just like you've moved the issue to another location rather than tackle the issue.
Absolutely. What do you think the government and the mayor and other politicians should be doing to tackle knife crime? Is it tackling, going for the gangs directly, being tougher with the police? What do you think, Matt?
You know, I've had conversations about this. I really feel like there's no deterrent in place. You know, there's no deterrent in place. On top of that, you know, a lot of criminals are, even like months ago, like last year, they were emptying out, you know, a lot of criminals onto the streets. So there's just no deterrent. If Sadiq Khan's going to be proactive and really tackle knife crime the way it should be tackled, then, you know, I'll take my hat off to him. But for now, he's been absolutely useless, and he's done nothing to even stop phone theft and just theft in general. So I don't even know the graph that he put out on his Twitter saying that crime and everything's down, because I'm looking at a lot of the statistics and it shows that everything's up. So he needs to be proactive, or if not, then, you know, he needs to vacate.
Well, Matt Ajay, an anti-knife campaigner, thank you so much for joining me to give me your take on what's happening there. Let's definitely hope knife crime starts to come down in London, because it's getting out of control. I totally agree with you. OK, well, plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show. But if you're travelling from home, work, or back from your bank holiday, perhaps, here's your traffic and travel update. Don't forget to stay with us on Digital and Radio.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Motorists face a 20-minute delay on the A82 southbound between Luss and Stoneymollon roundabout due to congestion. In Trawsfynydd, the A470 is diverted following an accident. On the A64 westbound in North Yorkshire, a collision led to a lane closure, with normal conditions expected soon. In Peterborough, a collision on the A47 eastbound between junctions with the A1260 and A15 closed all lanes. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast undergoes major engineering, altering services to and from London Euston. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. Well, we're going to go straight to live pictures of the South Korean president meeting the United States President Donald Trump. He's just entered the building there. This is to do with tariffs, of course, because Donald Trump unveiled a raunch of tariffs not that long ago across countries all over the world, including South Korea, who've been previously facing a 25% levy. He's obviously managed to strike a deal with Trump, and there's this 15% rate now that, of course, will be debated today between the two leaders. It will cost, the South Korean economy a lot of money. So, as you've seen over the last few months, tons and tons of leaders from around the world have piled into the White House to, well, it almost feels like paying tributes to the king in some ways, doesn't it? Coming to negotiate with the economic powerhouse of the world, that is the United States of America, of course. We will keep you posted if we see more scenes there between the two, and I'm sure there'll be a lively discussion between the United States president and the president of South Korea. But of course, it was only at the end of July that Donald Trump announced that the US would slap South Korea with a 15% tariff. He called it a full and complete trade deal. South Korea previously been facing that 25%, but the deal that has been struck will see Seoul invest $350 billion, get this, $350 billion in the United States. So Trump is managing to take these trade deals and convince many, many countries around the world to invest, almost reinvest in America. South Korea is, of course, a country that had a lot of money given to them by the Americans following the war with North Korea and China. So it'll be yet to be seen what happens after that meeting today. But anyway, coming up, we're just going to get your headlines from the GB newsroom with Katie Rowan.
Good afternoon. The headline 5:35 and breaking news in the last half hour. 3 people have died and a 4th remains in hospital in a serious condition following a helicopter that crashed during a flying lesson on the Isle of Wight. The aircraft came down near Shanklin Road just after 9:20 this morning. Hampshire police say they're continuing to work alongside the Air Accident Investigation Branch to establish what happened. US President Donald Trump has signed an executive order that bans flag burning, with those who desecrate the American flag potentially facing 1 year in jail. The president said that the military is ready to go anywhere on short notice to crack down on crime. That's as he signed another executive order aimed at ending cashless bail for suspects arrested in Washington, D.C. The South Korean president has just arrived at the White House. The government is promising a fast-track asylum appeal system as 51,000 cases clog the system. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper calls delays completely unacceptable, while critics warn nearly half of appeals succeed, showing first decisions often fail. Hospitality has taken the biggest jobs hit since the last budget, with nearly 90,000 roles lost in pubs, restaurants and hotels. The Treasury says it's supporting the sector with business rates relief and cuts to duty on pints. More than 80% of shoplifting offences in England and Wales go unpunished as cases hit record highs. The latest data shows over half are closed with no suspect identified, and in London just 6% lead to charges, a situation the Liberal Democrats call an absolute scandal. And Europe's biggest street party is taking over West London today. The Notting Hill Carnival is expected to draw 1 million people onto the streets. This year, 7,000 police officers will be on duty using stop and search powers and live facial recognition cameras after 140 arrests were made yesterday. 61 officers were assaulted last year. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's sunny and very warm out there today before turning more unsettled with rain or heavy showers for the rest of the week. Now, having a look at the bigger picture, we've got high pressure across the UK today, but this cold front will bring outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland later. So through the rest of this evening, a fine end to Bank Holiday Monday across England and Wales, but a band of rain will give an unsettled picture across Northern Ireland and then later into Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest of England overnight, where the rain could turn quite heavy at times, but otherwise staying dry for the longest across the far southeast and temperatures holding up at around 16 or 17 overnight. So to start Tuesday morning then, this band of rain will affect much of eastern Scotland and still hold on to some low cloud across Shetland. But towards the west, that's where we see some brighter spells developing, but also some showers. So generally some sunny spells coming through across Northern Ireland to start Tuesday morning, likewise for parts of Wales and the southwest. But we hold on to this cloud across much of central England with some patchy rain here. And that band of cloud and rain will continue to slowly edge its way eastwards, generally fizzling out as it does so, just to bring a few spots across the southeast. But otherwise, behind that, it's a case of sunny spells and some showers, most frequent across Scotland and Northern Ireland, staying driest for the longest, most likely across the southeast, where temperatures still holding up at around 26 degrees, but fresher across the far west. Now, as we go through Tuesday evening, then we hold on to the showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some of these could be heavy, but largely dry across the southeast to start. But otherwise, it is still staying unsettled on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, with heavy spells of rain and showers and temperatures generally closer to average.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Alex Armstrong on GB News, covering for Martin Daubney. Well, Gen Z are heading back, or Gen Z, depending on what you prefer. I don't know. Lots of you argue with me about this one. But Gen Z are heading back to the office to combat loneliness. Well, new research by Bupa found that 40% of 16 to 24-year-olds blame the nature of their work for leaving them in need of more human interaction. Well, we can now speak with Head of Operations at the Autonomy Institute, Jack Kellum. Jack, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, this trend of remote working has been a phenomenon that was really, I guess, boosted by COVID in quite dramatic numbers. We've seen many businesses struggle to get people to come back to the office, but Gen Z, which is this 16 to 24-year-old cohort of young people, are perhaps the most likely to not want to come back to an office, but now they're saying they feel lonely. Is there any surprise?
I think what we're seeing here is that the conflict lots of people have tried to set up around remote working and hybrid working and going back to the office maybe isn't as deep as was imagined. So often people have been trying to set up Gen Z as preferring this remote working, not being based in the office. But I think actually, you know, a few years after the pandemic now, I think many people are realising that some combination of office time, the social interaction it brings, which this survey has just brought out, along with some of the flexibility that a part of remote working can also bring to you, actually might be the most sort of sensible setup, and that shouldn't really be surprising. So I think really this actually shouldn't be too surprising for us to see, and reflects the underlying reality that's been there for much of this time already.
Indeed, and I was reading the other day that we are seeing more office closures in the United Kingdom as a result of this uplift in remote work. So these young people who now are thinking to themselves, well, actually, I'm sick of working remotely, are struggling to find jobs in offices. Now, what solutions could businesses try to at least help those young people that are feeling lonely? What sort of activities, perhaps, are they organising?
Look, I think the question of productivity in the office and making productive working environments, you know, some of the problems apply both to offices and to remote working setups as well, right? So I think one of the really important things that companies might be thinking about, whether that's in the office or remote workers, is having a strict sense of when people are expected to work. I mean, realistically in the UK, we need something much more like a right to disconnect, which gives employees the ability to switch off outside of their given working hours. So I think giving people a good sense of of delineation of their time in the office, when they're expected to be able to go home. I think that's a really important policy alongside hybrid working, which we should be looking to. But I think, again, things like better line management, I know that's something that lots of young people are also looking to, a sense of career development as well. These are lots of things that can come along maybe more easily in office environments. And could be things that people can, companies can really try and lean into as people are coming back to the office.
Yeah, we're seeing, at least some reports suggest that there's a drop in productivity in Britain as a result of this remote working phenomenon, particularly as it seems that, I mean, many people are pointing to the tube, for example, in London being dead on Mondays and Fridays, and the days of the working week for many are Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. I'll let the audience figure out the acronym for themselves. It's been dubbed for that. But do you think that there's a case to be made that we need to actually get people back to the office to increase productivity, and it will actually help benefit the economy too?
I actually think, to be honest, that the obsession over the location of working really isn't the main cause of the productivity problems we have in the UK. I think much more likely is the really long working hours we have and the crises of burnout and stress that have been caused by this in recent years. So I think, like I said, through policies like the right to disconnect, or through shorter working weeks, like a 4-day working week, by reducing working hours without reducing pay, this is actually more and more trials, whether that's in the UK, Iceland, the US, Japan. They're showing that reducing working hours can actually boost productivity. People are more focused in the time that they're in the office or at home and produce better results because of it. So really, rather than, I think, focusing on the location of where people are working, because like I said, I think these figures show that, you know, there's not so much of a conflict over it. People are hybrid working already and going back to hybrid working. It's better to focus on working time, how to reduce that, and how to put policies in place so that people can be most productive while they are in their working hours.
Oh, Jack Kellum, thank you for joining me, Head of Operations at the Autonomy Institute. Very well, really welcome your comments there. I think many of my viewers many of you are getting in touch and saying actually feel like the young generation is lazy, that they need to get back to the office, and that we need to crack down on the workplace and get them back in there so they can learn from their peers, which I tend to agree with. I think there's a bit of balance to be found, but I tend to agree with. But anyway, if you're in search of some holiday sun, perhaps you're one of those young people working remotely. Here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, there's plenty of sunshine across Europe and it's feeling hot too, but thunderstorms will be developing, especially midweek. So a bit breezy across parts of Madeira and the Canary Islands with showers here. Best of the sunshine really across much of Spain, but still showers will be bubbling up, especially across parts of Italy later and across Greece. But otherwise, temperatures still up at around 29 to 30 degrees. Now, showers will become more widespread into the week, but otherwise highs of 33.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Got a lovely article on the Times Online about you and Maggie, your lovely dog, who is 17.
Yeah.
But I was reading, and I have to ask you, about what happens when the day comes, when Maggie passes on.
Yeah.
You'd like to get her stuffed?
Well, the thing is, she's of stuffing size. You know,
she's taxidermy. I'm not sure about this.
She's quite good. She's about the size of a fox. So she is, and she could just sit very nicely on the mantelpiece.
Oh, you wouldn't want her on your mantelpiece. Look at her.
But why?
Wouldn't it upset you too much?
No, it wouldn't upset me. It would make me feel quite good. I have got a bronze statue of her made.
Oh, I like that statue. I've seen that before, yeah.
And when it was made, you had her and the statue together and you couldn't tell which was which, really. But they are. Look, it's love. Dogs bring out the best love in you. It's an unconditional love. You'll never experience anything else like it, and it's that way back from me. There she is. That was 17 years ago.
Oh, look at her.
Do you think I look any different?
You haven't changed a dot. You haven't changed a dot. She's gone a little bit grey, hasn't she? But she's still smiling. And if we've got the pictures from yesterday, she's got a big smile on her face.
Because she's an adopted dog, I think she appreciates, you know, the new home that she's got and the life that she was taken away from.
She's grateful, isn't she? I get that from her.
Well, I would. That's what I would like to think. That's what I like to think. And if you can, please adopt and do not shop.
Yeah, I'm in the market for a dog.
Yeah?
Yeah. After the honeymoon, I think we're going to start looking for a dog. That's the plan. So maybe
honestly,
early next year.
Go round one of the homing centres, you know, just adopt.
But I'd want to take all of them home. That would be my problem.
Well, that could well
I'd
be
end up with 50.
But what
Need a farm.
what a great choice to make.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Alex Armstrong covering for Martin Daubney on GB News. Well, let's return to the breaking news we brought you earlier this hour. Police have confirmed that, sadly, 3 people have died and 1 person remains in hospital in serious condition following a helicopter crash this morning on the Isle of Wight. The helicopter went down in a field during a flying lesson near a seaside resort town on the island earlier today. Well, joining us now is helicopter pilot and instructor Quentin Smith. Quentin, thank you so much for joining me today. Very, very sad news, of course, about those casualties, those fatalities there, and of course one person in serious condition. Quentin, perhaps you can help the audience understand what sort of circumstances would lead to a crisis like this in a helicopter.
Well, Alex, it's good to be with you, and I've got to say, I'm really shocked, and my heart goes out to the families of the people affected. It's an absolute tragedy and a major shock. It's extremely unusual for an accident of this type to occur. The last previous fatal accident was 1 person in 2012. This is a Robinson helicopter, so it's exceptionally reliable. And we really don't expect an accident of this kind.
Indeed, Quentin. I wonder, perhaps, you know, of course, this was during a flying lesson, and I don't like to speculate because, of course, people have lost their lives in this circumstance here. But perhaps, is there any light that can be shed on the fact that it was a flying lesson? Perhaps a qualified pilot wasn't in control at the time, or perhaps there was some adverse weather conditions, some freak weather condition that occurred at the time. Do we have any more information on that, perhaps?
I think the weather was good, and there's no reason to believe that that's a factor. But we're going to have to let the AAIB know, the Air Accident Investigation Branch. They will investigate it, and they'll, of course, come up with a cause, and then we'll know. But I've looked at the photographs of the accident site, and it's really very surprising that there are fatalities. It looks like quite a gentle, relatively gentle impact, and so it's really quite a shock that there are fatalities at all.
What sort of circumstances might mean that someone loses control of a helicopter? Is it potentially a piloting issue, perhaps a mechanical issue? What are the common causes of these sorts of accidents, if you may have any information to share on that?
Well, these are all speculations, and you know, of course, there's a huge pressure to speculate. The biggest cause of accidents is inadvertently flying into clouds and losing your visual references, and then losing control. But there's no indication that that's happened here. So yeah, it's a freak accident, and very, very unusual. It's you see accidents occasionally on the news, and you assume they happen quite often. They're really extremely rare. The Robinson helicopter is about 40% of the helicopters in the UK.
And Quentin, very briefly, how popular is it to learn how to pilot a helicopter in Britain? Is it a skill that more and more people are trying to learn, or is it a sort of a dying skill, perhaps?
No, it's generally slowly, exponentially rising. It's a beautiful state of being, to fly the freedom, to see the world, and to see the surface is absolutely extraordinary.
Wow.
It gives you a great perspective on the world.
Indeed it does. Quentin, unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us. We will speak to you again very, very soon. Well, thank you everyone at home for joining me today. I will be back on the show tomorrow. But next up, Dawn Neeson is covering Michelle Dewberry. Dawn, what have you got going up for us on your show?
Hello, thank you very much. Alex, right, we've got a brilliant show coming up for you. We've got Zia Youssef, exclusive on reforms, Operation Restore Justice, migrant deportation. You don't want to miss that one. Trump makes burning American flags illegal. We're asking, is it time for a British revolution based around the love of our flag here? All of that and much more. Oh, and Angela Three Reigns Homer, of course, why not? All of that and much more to come. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you soon.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's sunny and very warm out there today before turning more unsettled with rain or heavy showers for the rest of the week. Now, having a look at the bigger picture, we've got high pressure across the UK today, but this cold front will bring outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland later. So through the rest of this evening, a fine end to Bank Holiday Monday across England and Wales, but a band of rain will give an unsettled picture across Northern Ireland and then later into Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest of England overnight, where the rain could turn quite heavy at times, but otherwise staying dry for the longest across the far southeast, and temperatures holding up at around 16 or 17 overnight. So to start Tuesday morning then, this band of rain will affect much of eastern Scotland and still hold on to some low cloud across Shetland. But towards the west, that's where we see some brighter spells developing, but also some showers. So generally some sunny spells coming through across Northern Ireland to start Tuesday morning, likewise for parts of Wales and the southwest. But we hold on to this cloud across much of central England with some patchy rain here. And that band of cloud and rain will continue to slowly edge its way eastwards, generally fizzling out as it does so, just to bring a few spots across the southeast. But otherwise, behind that, it's a case of sunny spells and some showers, most frequent across Scotland and Northern Ireland, staying dry for the longest, most likely across the southeast, where temperatures still holding up at around 26 degrees, but fresher across the far west. Now, as we go through Tuesday evening, then we hold on to the showers across Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some of these could be heavy, but largely dry across the southeast to start. But otherwise, it is still staying unsettled on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, with heavy spells of rain and showers and temperatures generally closer to average.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News.